So it'll be a minute before we're actually. Charlotte?
Sorry, you're good.
Great. Good evening and welcome commissioners, applicants, and interested parties to the October 17th, 2024 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Commission. My name is Valerio Romano. I'm the chair of the commission and will be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Chapter 260 of the Cohasset bylaws governing wetlands protection, and Chapter 263 of the bylaws governing stormwater management. The Conservation Commission meeting is now open, in session, and being held on Zoom. If you have any questions for the commission, please put them in the Q&A section of the Zoom app. Please include your name and address to be recognized. When called, please limit your discussion to 3 minutes. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission, in addition to the commissioners, is the town's conservation agent, Charlotte Pechtel. I will now take a roll call of the commissioners who are present. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Commissioner Tom Bell.
Tom Bell, present.
Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Chris McIntyre.
Chris McIntyre, present.
And we anticipate that Sanjay Fernando will also be joining and he will make his presence known. And then Valerio Romano, chair, and I am present. Currently, we have 4 commissioners with a 5th hopefully joining. First, we have some minutes to approve. We have the minutes from the June 27th meeting. Do I have a motion on the approval of those minutes?
You guys were all here for that one.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? I believe a voice vote will be sufficient. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from June 27th, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously 4-0 to approve the June 27th minutes. We also have the minutes from September 5th, 2024. Charlotte, were we all here for that?
1 second. I think so, except for Sanjay, but he's not here. So, yes, you were all here except for Sanjay.
So I
do we have a motion for
approve the
approval
minutes
of this?
for, what is it, September 5th, sorry, 2024.
September 5th, yes.
Second.
Any second?
Second.
I think a voice vote here will be sufficient also. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes 4-0. Charlotte, before we get on to our first public hearing, is there anything else that we should address? Also try to give Sanjay another minute.
Yeah, just that the show cause hearing for 45 Little Harbor Road was continued to November 7th. So, but other than that, good to go for the first hearing.
Great. So if anybody's in the audience for that show cause hearing, you can leave, and we'll be hearing it in November. Okay. Our first public hearing is for request for determination of applicability for number 24-16 to discuss the placement of a storage shed at 0 Lothrop Lane. Will anyone from the applicant team be making a presentation? Charlotte, is there anyone to promote?
Could you just read the public notice for that one? That's the only one we have to read.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
Oh, and then
That's right.
Sanjay's here too.
That's our only new. Oh, perfect. So one moment, please.
Yep. And hi, Sanjay. Can you just say your name and say present?
Sanjay Fernando, present.
Perfect. Okay, so we have 5.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, of the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw, the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing for RDA 24-16 to discuss the placement of a storage shed at 0 Lothrop Lane. The hearing will be via remote participation on Zoom. The public is invited to offer input by emailing cpexel@cohassetma.org. Details for access to the Zoom platform are available on the town's website.
All right.
Chair,
That hearing
this is
is now
Sanjay.
open. Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this as the applicant is a direct neighbor.
Okay. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thanks, Sanjay. Okay,
Hey, John.
great. Charlotte, is there anybody who will be presenting?
So we have John Brown, the applicant and owner. Hey, John.
Hi.
Hi, John.
Hi, everybody. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for your
joining us.
time. So the application was pretty straightforward. And I don't know what the best use of your time is. I can just answer questions that you may have having looked at it, or I can give you a 1 to 2 minute synopsis up front as to what we're trying to accomplish. You tell me how you want to navigate through this, and I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, John, if that would be all right with you, I see somebody put it up on our Zoom screen, maybe Charlotte's driving. But yeah, if you want to just give us a couple minutes and describe what the project is.
Sure. So about 4 or 5 months ago, my wife and I bought a small parcel of property on Sandy Cove. The property address is 0 Lothrop Lane. Some of you may be aware of it. It's a series of small sheds and bathhouses that are clustered together in a little piece of property that's sort of communally owned by a whole bunch of folks that goes way, way back in time. It's like I said, the formal address is 0 Lothrop Lane. This shot happens to say 0 Sandy Cove. It's known by everyone around the area as Lot H. And Lot H has, I don't know, between 30 and 40, maybe more partial owners, which really grants you rights to access Sandy Cove, and in some cases grant you rights to actually have a physical parcel within Lot H. And that's what we purchased. We purchased a 8 by 18 foot parcel from a longtime owner, Lynn Parmenter. It was in her family since 1951. That had been in her name since 1981. So she had it for about 40 years plus. And she's moving on and wanted to sort of dispose of it. And we thought it would be a nice thing to add. So we purchased it from her. And then the intent is to replace a shed. They call them bathhouses, but they're sheds. They're temporary sheds that she's had in there and her family's had in there for a long time. It's currently not there. It was sort of fell into disrepair and cleaned out. But the property's there and it's all sort of free title, et cetera. And so we're requesting, I met with John Hallen, the building inspector, put a formal building permit in place with him. He hasn't approved it yet, pending your decision in our discussion here this evening. But the intent would be to put a small temporary Reed's Ferry shed, 8 by 16, on the parcel where the previous shed existed. There's another, I don't know, Charlotte, if you want to bring up that other picture of the zoom in from Morse Engineering to show exactly where it is. That might give you a little bit better perspective.
Yeah, was that in your application? Jen?
Yeah, it was in the application. It was also in the building permit that I sent to you when I sent it to John as well.
Oh, okay. Is it the plot plan page?
Yeah, I call it attachment A on my application.
Oh, perfect attachment. Okay, got it.
This is a bit of a zoom in to show where the shed would actually go.
Yes.
So you can see in the middle there, you see the parcel that says vacant. That's our parcel. I can give you a long, unedited history of Lot H because it goes back really, really far. And it's fascinating the number of people that own in there and have owned and names you'd recognize around town. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, I had that in yellow. It didn't come through in the slide, unfortunately. So that's the request. Couple of highlights. Temporary, according to John Hallen, it meets all of the building code specifications for a temporary structure. No foundation, no utilities, seasonal use only. There's a series of things that he sort of ticked down through and said this this meets all of those. There's no problem there whatsoever. Replacing a pre-existing bathhouse. Importantly, the owner really stressed the fact that when they removed the old one, they continued to pay taxes and made sure that the tax authorities in town showed it as a bathhouse. So I also included in the RDA application a tax assessor report that shows it says the word bathhouse in there. And Lynn, the former owner, said, listen, I purposely wanted to make sure that that stayed grandfathered in, and I paid taxes on it as if it were physically there, because my intent was to replace it eventually. But that's, if you talk to the tax assessor's office, you'll see the word bathhouse there now. That's a shot of what the shed looks like. There are these prefab sheds. You hear the commercials on the radio all the time for Reed's Ferry sheds. So that's it. It's outside of the 50-foot zone, but it is in fact in the 100-foot zone. And I guess the last compelling thing that sort of I feel is important to my case is I have no other place to put it. So I was in front of this commission about a year ago trying to put a small patio in my yard over in Atlantic Avenue. And the consensus, your consensus was, listen, if you have other places on your property to put the patio, so we're not going to let you put it in the 50-foot zone. This is not in the 50-foot zone, but staying with the same argument from last time, I have no other place. This is the only place that I can put a shed.
And what are we doing with I'm sorry, I'm just curious. What do you keep, just beach stuff there?
Yeah. You put it's not insulated or anything. You put your beach chairs, umbrellas, kayaks. If you walked around down there, they all have padlocks on them, but that's exactly what they're used for. And like I said, they're seasonal. We have all of us who collectively sort of own this area. We chip in every year. We pay for maintenance of the ground, the shared ground, and cleaning up the beach in front of it immediately. We have a garbage can that the association, the Sandy Cove Association, looks after. So it's sort of a little bit of I guess the association is probably the best word to use. But yeah, it's a shed for summer toys.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Commissioner Bell, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Berrigan, any questions or comments?
No, I don't. It was answered. I didn't quite understand this plan here. I didn't know where the lot was, which one was there, but now I do, and I'm fine with that.
Chris, Commissioner McIntyre, did you have anything else?
No.
So I only had a couple quick questions. So it's a prefab shed, so I assume like a semi or something will come and drop it and move it in there?
It's exactly how they do it. It's in and out, couple of hours. They come the day before to kind of prep the site, put down some crushed stone and a couple of cinder blocks. They come in with a little flatbed and they just drop it off. I mean, they have a video on their website, Reed's Ferry. This is one of their smaller ones, so it'll come, I mean, if not totally assembled, majority assembled. It's a single day project.
And then the access for that large truck, is there any issue? I mean, is there anything that we should be concerned with that truck, either damaging, existing trees or somehow, running over any protected area? Where does it come in from?
Yeah, I mean, Lothrop Lane, it's a dead end street. This property is about, I don't know, 125 feet down off of Atlantic Avenue, so there's not a lot of road to have to travel down. It's a two-way street, and with no parking on either side, which is a good thing. So there's always ample clearance.
So it's right there, right off Lothrop Lane. So it's not like it has to, some piece of machinery has to traverse, and okay.
Yeah.
And then
the shed,
it looks like, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry.
And then you're the part. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're three houses in off of Atlantic Avenue.
Okay. And then when I look at this image that's up now, is that what says vacant, that 8x19 is sort of the little piece of Lot H that you've acquired.
Yes.
And the shed is 8x10. So it takes up all but, sort of 9 feet of that.
It's 8x16, actually.
Oh, it's sorry, I couldn't read it well. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell if that was a 6 or a 0. It's a 6, so it's 8x16. So it basically takes up that whole little parcel.
Absolutely. And you could see from this drawing, this is Morse engineering. People have not, this has not been an exact science over all these decades of where these things go. So there's one that's currently on a little bit on my land. You could see one down below that said the word beach house is on somebody else. I mean, it hasn't really been administered to the tightest specifications, but I will be in full compliance. I will be inside the 8x19 footprint.
I just sort of, I wouldn't want, the neighbors to come back and say, hey, he stepped over on my little parcel that I have. So just keep, and then that's not really our issue. I guess the last thing that I have, would you have an objection to some sort of condition which prohibited the storage of hazardous chemicals or oils and that sort of thing within the shed?
Absolutely not. There's no reason why we would have any of that there. So by all means. Nothing.
Okay. I don't know. That's just a thought that I had. I don't know what the rest of the board would think, whether we even need to make such a condition, but it seems to make sense to me, particularly given where it is, proximity to the resource areas. So that's all I have. Anybody else on the board before we keep it moving forward? So Charlotte, this is an RDA. My sense is that we would give it a negative determination and allow this to move forward without NOI being filed. Does the rest of the board have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chair, we do have some comments from the public. So I don't know if you want to get to those in a second. I don't know if you're just talking to commissioners first before we move on. Public comments.
Yeah. Why don't we take the comments before we move on? So we're getting close to the vote. Sorry, I didn't see the Q&A. I just brought it up now.
No, that's okay. Yeah, sure. I'll just read it. So this is Tony Catlin representing 7 and 17 Lothrop Lane. I didn't quite maybe understand here, John. Does he own the parcel? There is a major concern with Sandy Cove residents about the legality of this, in that parceling out multiple small pieces of this bathhouse, like that is not legal or appropriate. This has been an ongoing issue with longtime residents. How does the applicant plan to construct this bathhouse? Where will any construction equipment be staged? And do we get to see what this will look like, height, etc.? We'd like to make sure no construction equipment will be parked on Lothrop Lane, nor will our properties at 7 and 17 Lothrop Lane be used for staging for construction of this bathhouse. This is a private lane street. There's no parking allowed. So I guess, Mr. Chair, maybe it's okay to kick it back to the applicant to answer some of those questions in terms of, does he own the parcel concerning the legality of this area with the mini parcels, and how do you plan to construct it? And then what does it look like? At least I think I can go back to the picture, but would that be okay to kick it back to the applicant?
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think most of those questions were sort of already answered, other than the general legality of, sort of dividing the Lot H into these smaller bathhouse parcels, and I can't really comment on that. I would expect that if this has been ongoing for some time, that that's just something that the neighbors would have to sort of discuss. As far as the parking issue, John, I mean, it seems to me that there is some concern if neighbors are saying there's absolutely no parking, although you're not going to be constructing anything. It's going to be a few hours. I've actually had one of these sheds installed at a previous house, exactly the same thing, basically, same company and everything. And they just sort of drive it on and set it up and make sure it's all level, and it takes a couple hours. But there may be some objection to you even parking that semi there to unload the shed onto the smaller mover that they put him on. So I don't know how you all are going to resolve that.
Yeah, I could talk to the Reed's
John,
Ferry.
you want to address it?
Yeah, I could talk to the Reed's Ferry people about the size of the truck. I mean, they could probably figure out a way that if it has to come on a bigger truck, they could probably figure out a way to use a smaller truck just to bring it down the driveway. That's one thing. The other thing is the thing about doing it during the winter. Most of the houses on Lothrop Lane are summer cottages, or they're winterized homes, but they're used in the summertime primarily. So we thought sort of like a February, March type of thing before there's any real serious traffic up and down that street would be a practical time to do it. So I was sort of thinking that through as well. And then, like, as I said before, there's not really construction per se. It's more of a delivery activity.
Okay, yeah, and so most of this isn't really in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, sort of arguments or discussions about, you know, availability of parking and whatnot. It's really our jurisdiction to protect the resource areas. And I'm not, to me, this doesn't really implicate that in any significant manner where I think you wouldn't need to file a notice of intent, but it will definitely be up to the rest of the board. So I hope that answers that person's question. Charlotte, do you want to go on? It looks like Tony has a couple other comments.
Yeah, just one additional one. Did I hear John said that he owns 1/80th of Lot H?
No, Lot H is referred to as Lot H. There's a whole bunch of owners in there. There are only a handful. When I say a handful, I think maybe 3 or 4 where there's a single named owner in the deed of registry for one of those parcels, and we happen to have one of them. Several of these little parcels are owned by multi-generational families. Some of them are in trusts, so you don't actually know who the underlying owners really are and how many underlying owners there are. There are some people that actually have, in fact, taken their parcels and subdivided it and sold little slices of it. I think that might be what the Catlins are talking about in the question. That's not who we are. We bought a full standalone, 100% owned in one name only parcel. So we don't fit in any of those other categories. It's actually quite clean.
Yeah, and you attached the deed to your application,
Yeah.
it looks like, so, which you know, was available pursuant to the public notice that was mailed out to abutters.
That's
And
the bad
posted,
house.
so,
This is the tax thing.
Oh, so yeah.
It's the last page, Charlotte. Keep I
keep
think
going.
that's the
Quick
cover
claim,
letter. There you
yeah.
go. Nope, I think that was it. Yeah, you want to.
There we go.
So this is to John and Emily Brown, and it's 8x19. It does
Okay.
describe it.
8x19. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mr. Chair, I also have one other suggestion for a condition, just because, you know, I mean, it's a sensitive area, you know, near, you know, the beach and, you know, the grasses and everything. So, you know, obviously I don't think we'd want to see any vehicles parked off to the side into the beach or anything like that. So I know that would make maybe offloading a tag complicated, but, you know, obviously we're trying to protect the resource area. So I think that's a fair request within our jurisdiction to just make sure that there aren't any heavy vehicles parking directly on the beach off to the side on Lothrop Lane to offload the shed.
There's fencing. But
Yeah.
that absolutely, put that in, that's absolutely, we would plan on doing that anyway. But I don't think practically speaking, it could do anything, but otherwise stay on the tarmac.
Okay. And
Yeah, I think
I'm
what
sorry.
they do is they drive the shed there in like, you know, on a larger, you know, and then a larger vehicle, and then they pick it up with one of those sort of 3-wheel forklifts
Yeah.
that you see around, you know, and then they drive, and then they put it in, and then they, you know, and they wedge cinder blocks and whatnot underneath it until it's level. And that's the way I remember ours being installed, same company. So hopefully it works out well. Yeah, I'm okay with that condition. I'm just one member, but I think the rest of the board will chime in. Unfortunately, as far as the questions, unless another member of the commission has, you know, further input, I don't really see those questions as really being germane to our jurisdiction, unfortunately. You know, so I hope they were answered to your neighbor's satisfaction. I'm not trying to shirk the concern or make light of it and not think that it's valid and appropriate. It's just not something that this board or the commission really has a lot of influence over satisfying. So
Yeah. He did have an additional comment.
go for
Yeah,
it.
I'll leave it to Mr. Chair. I'll leave it to you. Fractionalization of ownership for these lots has been and will be legally addressed, and he's asking to speak.
Given the fact that, you know, we're sort of cutting off the rest of the concerns, I think we should let Mr. Caitlin speak and not just sort of cut him off. Let's hear what he has to say. I don't want him to feel like the commission is just ignoring the concerns of any
Okay,
neighbors.
one
So
second.
fine with me. Please introduce yourself and give your address so that you can be recognized, and try to keep it just to a couple minutes if you can, Mr. Caitlin.
Yep. Hi, this is Tony Catlin representing 717.
Oh, Catlin.
We've talked to you guys before. This is a different project. There's been concern. John, did I hear you say, again, are you one of how many owners of the bathhouse?
No, we're the only, we're the sole owner.
Oh, you're the sole owner. Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay. Then maybe our concerns, my family's concerns are allayed in that some people have been trying to sell off slivers and, all of a sudden you've got 80 people owning, a 1-inch by 5-inch square. But if that's not the case, then our only concern is about traffic, and stuff like that. And if you're doing it in the off season, et cetera, then that I think would allay our concerns. I misheard. I thought you were a fractional owner. And
No, it's fun, interesting, Tony. So we bought over on Atlantic Avenue about a year and a half ago, and we had been approached by a couple of people who are fractional owners saying, we'll sell you a fraction, and we wanted no part of it. And we actually held out until we were able to find someone who had an entire entity and willing to sell it as a whole.
Okay.
Deed. So it's we're not fractional people, and
okay,
have avoided that.
so
And
you're
Mr. Catlin, you can see in the package that was noticed, and you can also see it on the screen if you have the Zoom platform open right now. There's actually the deeds up there, and so you could see verifying that John and Emily Brown do own that 8 by 19 foot portion of Lot H.
Okay. Yeah, as you all know, we're very protective of Sandy Cove and the lane. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
With that, if none of the commissioners have anything else, is there anyone else in the public, Charlotte, or anyone else in the public? Would you like to either raise your hand or type in a question?
I do not see anybody else raising their hand. And I'm sorry, we
All
are
right,
definitely
Charlotte,
over the
go ahead,
15-minute
sir.
mark.
Yeah, I know this was a small one too. So Charlotte,
Yeah.
should we give this a negative determination, which is essentially good for you, Mr. Brown, that you wouldn't have to file notice of intent? Which numbers would this be?
If you were to issue a negative determination, I think it would be -3. It is just out of the floodplain, I believe. So it'd be -3 for buffer zone activity, but not subject to NOI. And then -6 for the same thing under the bylaw. And then if -3, I think I heard, Valeria, you wanted a condition about no hazardous chemical storage allowed in the shed. And then, that there shall be no parking of any vehicles or materials on, the beach on Lothrop Lane to offload the stuff.
Thank you, Charlotte. Would any commissioner like to make that motion? I'll make it. So I'll move to issue a -3 and a -6 determination on this RDA. On RDA. I'll give the exact number. RDA 2416 for the placement of a storage shed at 0 Lothrop Lane with 2 conditions. One, that there shall be no storage of hazardous chemicals in the shed at any time. And 2, that Charlotte, do you want to restate the condition about where the vehicle should be placed when the shed's being
Yeah, just
offloaded?
that there shall be no, parking or storage of vehicles or materials on, in the resource area on Lothrop Lane.
Great, and so I'll make that motion with those 2 conditions. Do I have a second?
Berrigan, second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
and Valerio Romano, aye. And then Sanjay Fernando, who's present but abstained. So that motion passes 4-0-0 Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, and I'm happy that you were able to satisfy your neighbor's concern. With that, we'll close the public hearing.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Chair, you gotta close the hearing.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I thought I just did. Sorry. With that, we'll close the public hearing. Or we'll close the hearing. I think I did, Charlotte. I think you missed. I don't think you heard me.
You're all set. Thank you, John. Oh, he just jumped off.
Yeah. I appreciate. Okay. So I think that's the only one that we need to read the public notice for, but we do have some continued hearings. The
Yes.
next hearing is for NOI 24-29 and stormwater permit 24-29 for the redevelopment of 82 Border Street by Co Lobster LLC. That's continued from September 19th, 2024. Charlotte is the applicant in the audience that would like to make a presentation.
I think there might be
Thank you,
quite a
Nita.
few people, so give me
Oh.
1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Oh, no. Hi, Caroline. Is Deb joining us? I don't see her in the list. Oh,
Ms.
there's
Petro,
Kara.
Deb may join us later. This is Adam Brodsky.
And I do see
Yep.
Kara, so
Is Mr. O'Mara?
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
all right. Think we have everybody. I'm sorry, guys, this is a little
So let me
repetitive,
take
but could
a
you guys,
briefly-
Yep.
But just briefly, Sanjay, are you around? I just want to make sure that, you know, he's back with us for this hearing.
Oops, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm back.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sanjay. Go ahead, Charlotte.
oh yeah, sorry, I was just gonna ask everybody to just introduce yourselves really briefly for the record.
And
Name and
I'll be
affiliation, please.
I'll be happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Romano. This is Adam Brodsky. I'm a local environmental and land use lawyer, and I represent the applicant Co Lobster LLC. The manager of the LLC is Tom Sullivan. Eamon O'Mara, who's present, is our project manager. Caroline Reese is our registered professional engineer with Merrill. Carol Lam is our registered landscape architect, and Nino DeNuno from DeNuno Construction is going to be the general contractor, and he's here to address any questions regarding construction methodology. And if I might just briefly give an introduction, then turn the presentation over to Caroline. We last met with the Conservation Commission on September 19, and at that time, the commission and the agent requested additional information, which we provided. So you should have our revised notice of intent narrative and variance request. A response letter from Merrill dated October 9, 2024. A revised construction methodology and site protection diagram, and revised site plans with a revision date of October 8, 2024. Caroline will address these matters more specifically. I just want you to know that these are the subject matters. First, I sent another set of plans to the harbor master because there were some concerns regarding the harbor master's comments. I believe conservation staff had previously sent it to the harbor master. I'm not aware of whether the harbor master had provided any comments, but I just wanted to assure you that we had agreed to do that. The commission wanted additional information regarding the wetlands delineation, and Caroline will describe the delineation report from ECR. You asked about erosion controls and construction-related details, and Caroline has all of that information for you. Commissioner Bell asked about design flood elevations of the Main Inn and Eastwick Inn building. And in fact, those have been revised so that they will comply with the future 10th building code and the state resiliency requirements, which don't become effective until next year. But Caroline will address all those issues more specifically. We have a less complicated site plan to share with you. And as I indicated, provided a revised construction methodology and site protection response. So those are the subject matters that you requested additional information on. And with that, I'll turn it over to Caroline to present the detailed information. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. For the record, my name is Caroline Reese, I'm Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. We are representing the clients for 82 Border Street. Adam gave a concise and thorough introduction into what we've done since. A few things we are presenting to the board are a simplified wetland plan, which if I may share the screen.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to present some of the technical material in response to the Conservation Commission comments, and as well as comments from an independent peer review that was performed for the planning board, but there was a stormwater review aspect of that. So I will stick to those pieces. Here, can you see my screen okay? Can you see the site plan on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. This is a simplified wetlands plan. It coincides with the wetland review memo from Brad Holmes that we have submitted. So this is the existing conditions and the resource areas. Hopefully this is clearer. The yellow lines are the flood zones. The blue line are the resource areas, which are mean high water, coastal bank, the line of intertidal, rocky, I can expand this, shore, coincide with coastal bank. We have the offsite salt marsh, and then in purple are the riverfront area lines that coincide to the mouth of the river. And this purple hatched area is the riverfront area that's outside of Chapter 91 jurisdiction. So we submitted that. The independent peer review, as far as planning, that was another piece we were waiting on, has reviewed the stormwater report. I think the comments were relatively minor. They did ask for a long-term O&M plan that we've submitted to both planning and conservation. And in response to some other comments, we made minor adjustments to the site plan, which I will bring up. Here we go. We revised the site plan to extend the impervious cobble towards the front of Border Street. Even though we met stormwater requirements, this was just to provide additional collection of runoff as it approaches Border Street. We have also raised, actually this is a response to a zoning board, not planning board, I'm sorry, comment. And I believe you haven't seen it. We have raised the 2 in buildings and this deck around it to elevation 14. That is first floor elevation 14. That is on request of the building inspector to comply with 10th edition construction requirements. And we have submitted a revised construction methodology report with a site protection diagram. Those were from Mr. DeNuno. I can go into more detail on those if we would like to look at those. And additionally, we made some other minor changes. We've decided, and let me bring back up the site plan. The clients decided to, I got so many tabs here, bear with me. Here we go. Since this wasn't a request of the independent peer review, but more of a thought that the team has had since, the paved driveway parking areas are now going to be a crushed shell driveway. So we'll have very little pavement, paved areas. That will be for the ADA compliant parking spot and the landing strip, as well as the loading zone. but the rest of this area will consist of crushed shell or the pervious cobble pavement. And we did add a flagpole kind of at the corner of the new building. And I think with that, I can open it for comments or turn it back. Is that... All right.
Yeah, Commissioner Bell, do you have any thoughts or comments?
No, I'm pleased to see that we have seen a diagram for a change that was
I'm
comprehensive.
sorry, I'm not hearing. Ms. Thomas?
I'm saying, I
don't
said,
know why I'm not
I can hear you, Tom.
oh, okay. I'm pleased to see that there's been a simplified diagram to show us the various
know
restricted
why.
areas that are under our
Tom,
jurisdiction.
can I interrupt you just for 1 second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hmm.
It seems like Ms. Reese from Merrill can't hear us.
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
can't.
look like it.
Can
I'm
you give her a
going
second
to,
see if
I'm
she can
sorry,
point it
it's
out?
Adam Brodsky. I'm going to suggest that perhaps she log out and back in.
Adam, do you think you could text her or something?
Yes, I'm doing that right now. Thank you, Chair Romano.
Thank you.
Pardon me, I can't hear. Yeah.
Sorry, Commissioner Bell. I thought, given that
sorry.
No, it's
your
okay.
comments sort of addresses her work,
Let's
we'd give her a second.
Sure.
The speaker. Oh, no, it's not good. Mhm.
Charlotte, can you message her directly?
Yes. Caroline,
Uh,
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
I just heard you. I don't know. That was a first. I apologize for that
Great.
and it Tom's comments.
No problem. Tom, go ahead, please.
Okay,
Commissioner Bell, please.
So I wanted to congratulate you, Ms. Reese, for providing us with a more
Let's bring that up.
a diagram that was far easier to understand about the areas that are under our jurisdiction. And I just say that I appreciate the fact that you've addressed all of my concerns. And I think that by addressing the concerns of all the commissions and the reviewer that have looked at this, that you guys are well on your way here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Berrigan?
Yes, I was wondering, Caroline,
Mhm.
what's underneath the crushed shell on the parking area? I just don't know the construction. Like what would prevent oil or something for dripping
yes.
through and into the water?
Sure. Well, it's land underneath where the crushed shell is. And
Ah.
we're using what's called, let me see if I can bring this over, a gravel pave material. Can you see this screen here? You see?
Not yet.
It's slow coming up. Yeah, there's a gravel pave fabric that is kind of like a plastic rings, almost like the top of a 6-pack of Coke. I'm trying to bring it up. I had it here. That will hold the shells in place. But all the crushed shells are over land, existing land.
Okay. And then there's the plastic piece underneath that. Is that what you're saying? Over the
Yes,
ground?
let me see if I can, I know I
Okay.
can bring up a picture because it's helpful to see. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to go the long way. Yeah, it's just like a ring system that holds the material in place. And you know what? If I go, I have it. Goodness, I just.
So can anything infiltrate that to get into the ground, such as oil from a car or anything else?
It is a pervious material. It's the shells. The rings just hold the shells in place.
Mhm.
but it is a pervious material. A pervious surface.
Okay.
Shells, but as opposed to pavement.
Hmm.
And let me just see. I wish I could bring that up. I'm sorry.
okay.
I seem to be having a few little problems here tonight, but we'll get through it. Yeah, I can try to look around and see where that picture went for the material. Let's see. Can you see my screen here? It really
Caroline, you need to share your screen. It's Adam. We can't see what
yes,
goes
it's
on.
not. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not shared again. I'm sorry. I thought I was still sharing with all my computer glitches. Okay, here we go. Can you see this material, this website?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these are just kind of hollow rings like this that would just kind of hold the shells from running off into the resource area or onto the street. It's kind of a grid system that would keep the materials in place. Pervious, but it's a pervious surface. That helps.
So it can't be infiltrated with,
It
Okay.
can be infiltrated. It's pervious to the ground below.
right. Okay, but what, like if you have the, you're right up against the water, and if you have the cars parking there,
Mhm.
wouldn't
Oh,
that possibly lend itself to having some kind of, oil or chemicals or even gas dripping that surface and then to the ground and then into the water? That's what I'm concerned about.
a trade-off between pavement and pervious surface, understood, but the site is primarily graded toward Border Street, and there are catch basins on Border Street. But I think if it's generally we consider a pervious surface better than a paved surface. But as you can see, there's a high point about here. Most of the parking area, there's a high point here right about where, if you can see that, the ADA compliance spot is, and that we're going to leave paved. This portion of the lot drains closer to Border Street. It's going to be first captured in the pervious pavement, and the rest of it drains towards the pervious pavement and land here, and then to Border Street, as it does now. So I'd say, anything that falls to the ground is either hitting pavement and running or pervious surface and running, but we believe the pervious is an improvement.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Commissioner Bergen, this is Adam Borowski. This property has been historically used for commercial activities,
Yeah.
storage of trucks. The proposed use is far less intensive with the, parking of modern automobiles as opposed to, large trucks and other historic activities.
Right, understood. I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure, thanks.
Commissioner McIntyre. Do you have any thoughts or comments or questions?
I've been looking over the construction methodology statement. I have some concerns about the floating work docks. I think they'd be fine on the front of the building, but where the pier is, where the discharge from where the river comes through, I just don't think that's I'm curious if the harbor master has approved that, and if it's even feasible with the current.
Commissioner McIntyre, it's Adam Brodsky. I think similar to the process concerning Atlantica, we've come up with what we think are best management practices. If they're not successful, we will be adjusting this construction methodology. And so this is, based upon the advice of our consultants and experts, a reasonable approach. But if it's not working, it's going to have to be revised.
Yeah. I would be curious of a plan B then, I guess, because I just, like I say, did we get a response from the harbor master on locating the docks on that side?
No, I can, I'll follow up with her, but I think, Adam had also said that we both reached out to her, so we can try to follow up, to see what her comments may be. There could also be a potential condition, obviously, to run the construction plan through her as part of a pre-construction meeting, so that's another option, but it's up to the commission on that.
And if I might suggest, I mean, it would be perfectly appropriate to condition this, that if these measures are not adequate, that the applicant will immediately cease activity and come forward with measures to mitigate any issues which may arise. As a practical matter, that's what we need to do. Anyway, it's a high visibility site. I assume that Ms. Bechtel is going to be there often. The commissioners, the harbor master will be there often. And so it's something that perhaps the commission would consider and condition.
Commissioner McIntyre, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, in addition to that question on the floating docks, I was looking at the wash station. I'm curious what the management of what we're washing and where we would be washing it to. Is this for vehicles to not transport like dirt off the site? Because it doesn't seem like there's much dirt left there. I'm curious where and where that would just be discharged into the storm drain or what. It's rather general. That's why I was curious.
I can speak to that a little bit. That was actually a portion of the construction methodology that was carried over from the Atlantica project or the wharf. It was raised by the commission and hearings for that project, and we just applied it to this same project. If it ever did become muddy or anything like that, we would just make sure that vehicles exiting the site, weren't tracking mud into Border Street. I think we've done a good job of that so far on the Atlantica project. And I think it's more, for the Atlantica when the actual parking lot comes up and becomes the crushed shell material.
Mm-hmm.
I had a
I think
question.
Chris is doing his- Yeah, Sanjay, I was about to come to you. I just wasn't sure if Chris was finished yet. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Sanjay. That's
Okay.
it.
I was
Yeah, Sanjay,
I was
please.
thinking through the demolition again, and maybe this has already been covered out, but it's just hitting me now. If you uncover during the demolition, something that's materially hazardous, like asbestos or something like that, will you come back to us with a proposed plan to remediate or to address the safe demolition of that? Because it seems like the tenting assumes that there's nothing terribly dangerous in that demolition.
Commissioner Fernando, this is Adam Brodsky. Oil and hazardous material is regulated by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 21E. And if we encounter a reportable condition out there, we would need to comply with those state regulations and address them. It's not an issue that's within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. Similarly, if the building that we're removing contains asbestos-containing building material, ACBM, that's also governed by a different set of state regulations, all of which is regulated by DEP. Now, if we have to make a plan change, that would somehow differ from the plans that the commission approved, obviously we need to come to the commission for any changes within its jurisdiction regarding that. But those are two issues that are commonly addressed during construction. If there's a reportable condition, again, it will be reported to DEP and managed under the MCP. And similarly, any asbestos-containing building materials will be managed in accordance with those regulations. Hopefully that answers your question.
A little bit, but I'm not a lawyer, but is there a jurisdiction with regard to the fact that exfiltration of those materials could have a material impact on a protected area?
I imagine if there was a release into a jurisdictional area, so if any asbestos-containing material fell into the harbor, that would be certainly something that would fall within your jurisdiction. To address that, I mean, again, that's why we have all of these construction methodologies and protection devices to prevent any debris from getting into the harbor. But the actual cleanup of those things is regulated by other regulatory programs.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I'll come right back to you in a second. So I think sort of to piggyback off Commissioner Fernando's point, while the 21E and other portions of Massachusetts law, may govern those different hazardous materials, I think it certainly is within our jurisdiction to prevent what you said, Mr. Brodsky, them simply falling into the harbor. Or, we're talking about 4 different resource areas here, essentially: the land subject to coastal storm flowage, riverfront area, rocky intertidal shores, and the salt marsh, right? So it's really 4 different areas that are related here. And so I think what Sanjay was getting at is, given it's an old building there, and there's going to be some demo as this great new project is put together, and we don't know exactly what that old building is going to uncover. Should you uncover a hazardous material, whether or not there may be a portion of Massachusetts law, particularly 21E, that governs the removal and remediation of that material, I think it certainly does fall within our jurisdiction to make sure that that material, given its proximity to a protected area, is treated carefully. So I would mimic and piggyback off what he said. Should that come up, I think I would like to see a description of how it's going to be done properly. The last thing I want to see is asbestos being fed to a striped bass that's flowing through that river there.
So, Chair Romano, I agree with you. That's why the commission needs to condition this project to prevent any debris from getting into the harbor, which is why we've done our very best to come up with a construction plan to address that. Again, I think that's well within your jurisdiction. It's certainly protects the interests of preventing pollution under the State Wetlands Protection Act. But the actual, again, unless the plan is changing, those cleanup activities are really not within your jurisdiction. I think we're saying the same thing.
We are.
And my ask would be simply that, obviously you're going to take great care to condition this project so we can do our very best. As I said, if our construction methodologies and erosion controls are not working, it's perfectly appropriate to say, guys, you got to stop. You need to come back to us, the commission, and come up with new measures, which is, I think, what happened at Atlantica. It's something of an organic process, since it's such a unique project, and these are very unique resource areas and conditions, that it's reasonable to expect us to have to come back to the commission, probably with modifications of this if what we're doing is not working.
And we're relying on the builders and your team to let us know if any of that comes up as well, right? I mean, there's only so much that Charlotte can notice at any of us who, you know, happen by the site at any time. So we're relying on you to help, you know, make sure that none of those hazardous things do go into our waterway there. I'd like to point out, you know, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's why we hire registered professional engineers and
Yep.
licensed general contractors. We're hiring
Yeah,
them for their
absolutely.
expertise, not to create these problems, because at the end of the day, those problems belong to the ownership and not the contractor. So you're absolutely correct. We need to hire the very best and capable people to do this project.
And maybe I could
And, you know,
chime in too,
yeah,
like,
go ahead, sorry, Tom.
I guess, so if I'm understanding it, and again, not being a lawyer, like, you know, I'm not asking about the specific methods of cleanup activity, but if there is a breach of the protective barrier with hazardous material, is it correct to assume that there's a reporting chain back to DEP and other regulating bodies? And the second part of that question is, like, if that's the case, can we request that we be informed as well in that reporting process?
So Commissioner Fernando, you could certainly condition that. Again, there are two very different scenarios that you talked about. One is the release of oil or hazardous material, which would be a release into the environment. Or, for example, if we're excavating a building, we find a pit filled with hydraulic fluids. There's evidence that escaped into the environment that releases more than 10 gallons, then we would have a reporting obligation to DEP. There's no reporting obligation to the Conservation Commission, either under 21E or the Wetlands Protection Act. Asbestos containing building materials, again, it's another different regulatory program. I imagine you could condition the project to say that if there's a reportable condition under 21E, that you notify the Conservation Commission. I'm not going to argue whether or not that's within your jurisdiction or not. There's not much the commission can do because you don't have jurisdiction to regulate that area. The MCP, is the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, is probably a 5 or 6 inch binder of single space regulations that governs how you address releases of oil and hazardous material into the environment. It's very technical. So which is why that's really regulated at the state level. It's not regulated at the local level.
Thank you.
I wouldn't mind adding to, just to maybe ease your concerns, Sanji, that and Charlotte could speak to this. We don't wait until Charlotte stops by and discovers a problem. We realized early on that our proposed construction methodology at the wharf was not going to work. We proposed new ideas, worked with Charlotte, made sure that the commission was aware of the changes. And, this has occurred several times on this project. My project managers send Charlotte pictures often, or have her stop by. We're very, very concerned with anything getting into the harbor. We live here, work here. And we like to think we're one of the better contractors when it comes to this.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a comment
Pass it back
about
to
the prior
sorry, go
use
ahead.
of this site. It was a boatyard, and I have some personal experience with this, having worked in a boatyard for about 5 years, that the use of asbestos, certainly prior to about 1980, I would say, was extensive. It wasn't a building material. It was one of the ingredients, if you will, or one of the supplies that we used to repair boats in many cases. And so, Mr. Brodsky, you referred to the asbestos that might be used in the construction of the building, but asbestos was, again, a common material that was used in the repair of boats. And have you guys done any sort of an investigation to see if there is asbestos on the site?
Commissioner Bell, you're absolutely correct. The term asbestos containing, building material is specifically related to the building. There could be other materials containing asbestos. I'm going to guess, I believe, and I'll defer to Mr. DeNuno, is that's one of the requirements of the issuance of the building permit, that we do a building materials and investigation out there. I can't speak to what historic investigations there may have been done regarding environmental or building conditions prior. But it's a valid concern that will be addressed in connection with, and I'll defer to either Caroline or Nino as to a requirement of the building department that those conditions be looked at.
So wasn't the interior of this building extensively remodeled, if that's not quite the right word, but when they converted it to a lobster pound, they had to put in tanks, et cetera. And so probably most of the materials left over from the boat repair business that were there were removed. Is that accurate?
Commissioner Bell, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Mr. O'Mara knows the answer to that question.
Hi, Eamon O'Mara here. I don't have an answer to that question. The tanks were installed, and there's a pretty, thorough, complete renovation of that occurred when those tanks were installed, and we did not install those tanks. The operator installed those.
I mean, that's the shop floor is where I would expect to see residual asbestos. Not necessarily the building itself, but on the shop floor is where I would expect to be able to detect asbestos.
And Commissioner Bell, you're absolutely correct. If we encounter any materials containing asbestos during the demolition of this building, we have to comply with state law regarding identifying that material, containing that material, and ultimately disposing it using a licensed contractor. We're getting a little bit far afield of the Wetlands Protection Act and your wetlands bylaw. You have a standard condition in your orders of conditions that we obviously have to comply with all other state laws. So if we encounter any of these materials during construction, they're going to have to be addressed in accordance with state law.
But it's certainly relatively easy to recognize asbestos in the building itself. Pipes wrapped with asbestos, et cetera. How would you recognize residual asbestos on what was previously the shop floor? And the only thing I can think of is actually to test for it. It's not going to be immediately obvious, I guess is my point.
Again, I'm going to guess as a part of the building survey, in order to obtain a building permit, that we're going to have to hire a qualified professional to review all of the materials in that building so that we can safely take down the building and dispose of that. Again, these are all valid and reasonable questions, but perhaps not for a Conservation Commission hearing.
Well, it is part of our charge to, I think, to perhaps ensure that whatever is there does not end up in the water. And
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure that the measures that you're taking to prevent that from happening would be adequate in a case like this.
Sorry, I don't understand, Commissioner Bell. I mean, we provided protection to prevent materials from getting into the harbor. You're talking about disposal.
Gross materials, things the size of nails and et cetera, I suppose. But asbestos would be it would range from microscopic to certainly smaller than a nail.
And I agree. That's why it's strictly regulated under state law. It's actually, I believe it's portions of it are regulated under the air pollution regulations. But that's why there's a complete regulatory program at the state level to manage these materials. It's certainly not something that is typically managed by a local conservation commission. And again, I want to be clear that we have no knowledge of any asbestos containing building materials or asbestos materials in the building or any release of oil or hazardous materials. This is somewhat conjecture.
Well, in terms of your no knowledge of it is ignorance is bliss here, right? If you don't test for it, you wouldn't know, would you?
I don't think that's fair. It's a
You're asserting that you have no knowledge of it. Well,
so
if
again,
you haven't tested for it, of course you don't have any knowledge of it.
Adam, can I inject a little? We've got the perfect example next door, Commissioner Bell. We did encounter asbestos at the 46 Border Street site. We did hire a licensed asbestos contractor, pulled a separate permit for it, and made sure it was dealt with properly. The whole area was ballooned off and dealt with. So as far as, employee safety, that's paramount in my company, and we did make sure that that was handled properly once it was identified.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, you are looking at a building that hadn't been used as asbestos as one of the materials in use in their trade. You were looking at building materials that were pretty obvious. Now, any accumulated sediment or debris on the shop floor there wouldn't immediately be obvious that there's asbestos in it.
I mean, I would just say we'd be happy to test the floor for asbestos before demolition. We identified 9x9 tiles at 46 Border Street that shouted out potential for asbestos, and
right.
We did the right thing there, and we would intend to do the same on this site.
We are a bit off.
Commissioner Bell,
I just had one question.
Commissioner Bell, can I weigh in on do you think you could help fashion a condition that could describe a test that might satisfy that, really, what I think is an excellent concern?
I'm sure there's an ASTM protocol for the ASTM test for this. This wouldn't be the first boatyard to be redeveloped. So that's not my field of expertise.
Yeah, there certainly is, and we'd be happy to do so.
Just since you're mentioning the other site, was the material that was identified in the field, or was it identified as part of an asbestos survey?
It was identified in the field.
And so was there a survey done prior to, or?
A survey would have served no good. This was beneath a substructure of a floor on top of a floor that we discovered below.
Yeah, I get it. But there was a survey done though?
I am not sure on that. It wasn't a boatyard, so I don't think the same concerns were raised by the commission.
No, I'm just curious because that survey, an asbestos survey is required for any demolition project on a commercial level. So there should be one regardless. And then this concern is more, specific, obviously, to this site, but that's who would collect your floor samples, your asbestos consultant.
Right, and again, a pre-construction survey at 46 Border Street would have yielded no results because it was beneath the floor surface. So I think we did our due diligence. Once we pulled the floor up, we alerted the proper contractors and did the right steps to make sure it was taken care of properly.
Just to be clear, I'm not challenging your ability to recognize asbestos in construction materials of the building itself.
No, I understand.
I'm just pointing out that this is a common material in use in boat building and repair for a century or more.
No, I agree, and I think it's separate and different from 46 Border Street, and we would be happy to do that pre-construction survey.
Chair
It
Romano,
felt like
I
Mr.
think
Brodsky might have had a, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that I agree with Commissioner McIntyre. I believe that an asbestos survey is required as part of the building permit, demolition permit process, and would be required here, and he was confirming that.
And Tom, would that uncover the sort of residual asbestos from the boat use?
Well,
That type of survey?
if they're testing the walls and the structure, no. I mean, they really do need to specifically test the shop floor and any parts around the perimeter of the shop to see if there are areas that perhaps asbestos was stored. Places where it had been, one of the uses is to one of the uses was, at least when I was working, was to mix asbestos with polyester resin and use it as a putty on repairs for on wooden boats. And unfortunately, I was one of the guys that did the sanding to smooth that off. So I have a fairly significant exposure to asbestos when I worked there.
So Commissioner,
Mr. Brodsky, would you have an objection to a condition that, that required testing on the floor and the surrounding area? Maybe Tom could help us with some language that would, see if there's any residual asbestos from the previous uses before demolition begins. And report back to us with findings.
We're open to any reasonable condition. With that said, given Commissioner Bell's experience, I think it's made it important for us to make sure as part of our building survey that we hire, or at least we charge the asbestos expert to look for all potential sources of asbestos. Because if we transport asbestos off the site and we don't manage it in accordance with the state regulations, the penalties are significant, including the potential for criminal penalties with the state. So we have every interest in making sure that we identify any asbestos from any source, because if we don't handle that properly, we're going to have far larger problems. So if you want to try and embody that in a condition, in an order of conditions, again, my personal opinion is it's far reaching. We're going to have to do that anyway to make sure that our client is protected. And I take detailed notes of everything. And it would be simply good construction business practice to charge that asbestos expert with identifying any material, which is, I think, what they would do in the ordinary course. I can't speak to that. I haven't conducted these inspections, but I would hope that if I'm hiring an asbestos inspector and he walks the site and he sees something other than what's contained in building material, that he would call that out.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so I think one of the permit is called an AQ06. It's a DEP required demo permit, which is basically an assurance that an asbestos survey was required, and they should have the demo scope review anything. In addition to that, they would identify or should be, informed of the previous use, and that they should sample any what would be called suspect debris that may be on site. And I think that's would handle that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we are obviously well past 15 minutes. I think we're getting into 45 minutes here. I think I would recommend maybe just let's circle back and see if there's any additional information that commissioners are looking to see before we start talking about conditions. I do have a few things that are pending on my list that I can quickly go down, but just wanted to kind of circle us back here. I hate using that corporate lingo, but you know what I mean. So.
No, I appreciate that, Charlotte. And the concern of asbestos leaking into the the water there is obviously important. I wanted to let the discussion run its course, and it sounds like Commissioner McIntyre had some
Mhm.
good added thoughts there. Commissioner Bell, is there anything else that,
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Um,
I think we have a comment in the QA.
I just wanted to make sure Tom was finished with,
Yeah, no,
with, you
I
know,
think,
what.
I think Commissioner McIntyre's greater expertise in testing for asbestos at these pre-construction probably covers my concerns.
Okay, great. Charlotte, you want to read the Q&A?
Sure. Did not confirm his address, but I can definitely confirm that for the public if, Mr. Chair, if you're okay with that.
That's all right. It's all right.
Okay.
Let's just
Yeah,
ask the
so
question.
George McGoldrick of 70 Border Street. Does the floating boom surround the west portion of the site?
Yes.
I
It-
believe
it-
the answer, yeah.
The diagram that was provided, it has it around the entire site, looks like.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick follow-up comment. As the property owner, I'm happy to work out an easement with the applicant as a condition. Okay.
Okay.
We can note that in the conditions. I was drafting some right now, but they're definitely not finished. But I can note that.
And I know we want to move it forward. I would just point out that I understand the value in taking what worked for the Atlantic Avenue or Atlantica development and bringing that here. I think Commissioner McIntyre brings up a really valid point. The water rips through there when that current's moving. And, you know, the idea of having any floating platforms that may have worked for the Atlantica project, they're not going to work there. So just keep that in mind, because that water, I don't know, I mean, probably almost everybody has seen, you know, when the tides in both directions, the water's just ripping. I mean, it's white water virtually. So, you know, that exact plan isn't going to work. So I'm not going to let that hold the project up now, but just keep that in mind. I think the rest of the board. So Charlotte,
Oh,
you know, having said that, Charlotte,
Commissioner
yeah.
Romano,
Go ahead.
like,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm gonna kill myself for asking this question. Does that mean the boom's gonna wash away like the protected boom if the currents are moving so quickly?
Well, they won't be able to put it there. So if they try to put something there, that, I mean, during, you know, many hours, like the tide every 6 hours switches, you know, four of those hours on the incoming and the outgoing, that water's like hustling. So,
Water,
maybe every
anything
12 hours.
washing out with it, any debris is gonna get caught up in there and just create a mess. So I think an alternative is something that we should be asking for, perhaps like some sort of debris net or something that can be kept out of the water. I think would be more, and I'm not getting into means and methods or anything, but I think that would probably make more sense, at least along that the side of the river. And since we are talking about the diagram, the Weston Sampson report recommended a specific erosion barrier, which I don't know if I'm not seeing it on the diagram, but the 2L8 erosion control barrier, is that going to be incorporated, or is that just, I see only the silt sock.
Yeah.
What are they concerned about eroding there? This is all bedrock.
I don't know where they would apply it, but that was their recommendation. I think for traffic, I guess. I'm not exactly sure of that. I just looked at erosion barrier. It's like
Charlotte, could you bring up Nearmap? It just it sort of helps us visualize the flow conditions, and you can look at August 12th there, the most recent one. I think it really demonstrates the difficulties of doing anything from the water on the east side here. You're gonna have to capture your screen back.
Yes, Caroline, could I take the screen back, please?
Sure. Thank you.
And then while you're doing that, my last question was also from the Weston Sampson review. Mass Mapper is not typically considered adequate for wetlands delineation. Charlotte, is it more accurate for critical area identification, or is that something that we would need?
I can double check that, but I believe most, the ACEC stuff is mostly looked at through Mass Mapper. But yeah, is there an ACEC here? I don't think so, but I can double check.
There was a question from the West End Sampson, the response from.
Oh, in terms of standard 6, yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're in an ACEC here. I'll double check Mass Mapper right now, but I don't think we are.
That's what they refer.
If I may, we did check that. I don't know how that was missed or if Weston Sampson missed it, but there is not an ACEC.
Yeah.
And that's confirmed in the wetland review memo by Brad Holmes. He always checks that as well.
Yep. Okay, great.
And it's stated in the memo.
Mhm.
But that's our source of checking ACECs.
That was my question, is if it's field reviewed at any point, or if it's strictly just based on.
Yeah, I believe it's mostly Mass Mapper for ACEC specifically, because the state updates these data layers. Like, for example, our ACEC of knowledge, except for the ones near the train, is Straits Pond. Sorry, by train I mean the green line, but sorry, it's still loading, but I know where they are in town. Yeah.
So I think that this gives you some notion of how strong this current is, and it does that for hours at a time. And then on the flood tide, it's not white water, but the velocity there is extremely high, and it's just hard to see how you could have any kind of a floating boom here, or a work platform. I mean, the solution at 46 was to build a net, right, to capture debris.
Yeah, Commissioner Bell, we did construct those docks. We've actually never put them in the harbor. We came up with a better solution. We've since, installed windows, sided, painted. The netting has been great, along with the platforms we built suspended off the building. We would more rely on that same approach here. I think the docks are just, again, in there from the construction methodology from 46 border. Perhaps we could use them on the west side, but I don't even see the need to use them, since that building, once it comes down, is much smaller and more contained on the site.
Yeah, I don't see anything floating on the east side feasible.
No, not floating and staying in place, so that's for sure.
So I mean, I know that I know that we have time constraint and we want to move it forward, but can you explain to me, I guess it's netting that's going to be attached to the building itself now? Is that, how do we satisfy our concern that the construction methodology that exists in what was submitted includes something that's impossible and won't be able to capture debris falling into that white water, into that moving current? So what's the alternative, and just sort of help us understand that so we can keep this project moving forward. And I apologize to the audience and to other applicants and even to this team for how long this hearing is taking, but this is obviously a pretty critical question for a centrally located project in town. So can you help us understand how that gets resolved?
We do the same as 46 border and have before we did any work, we had Charlotte out, or during her absence, we still sent pictures to her and John Hallen of what was constructed. It's a very tight netting. I mean, even debris from sanding won't get through it. We'd be happy to be subject to pre-construction inspections from Charlotte.
Yeah, which to some extent would happen anyway, but do any of the other commissioners have any other comments or questions concerns that we want to bring forth to the applicant right now before we sort of let Charlotte discuss what her observations and notes are? And all right, Charlotte.
All right, I'll try to be as quick as possible. So Caroline knows a few of these. The illicit discharge statement, the picture that was provided, I think the town planner and I both just wanted to see a clearer statement there. So if the applicant could please resend that, that would be awesome. And then I don't think, Caroline, as of today that we got it, but we were waiting on Weston and Sampson's responses to your responses.
Yeah.
So I think we're still waiting on that. And then just a note on the long-term O&M plan, was there a different version? Because I checked my submission and I only see the one from September. So I didn't know if there was an updated one that we could look at. And then obviously I'm sure Weston and Sampson would want to take just a look at that as well. Because a lot of my previous comments about the O&M plan were about obviously removing language for the use of insecticides, pesticides, fertilizers on the site, given the sensitivity with all these coastal resource areas overlapping. And so I think it was definitely just some final, follow-up comments and review from Weston and Sampson there. And then we already noted the harbor master's comments are still pending. Depending on if the commission is open to it, we could always have a condition to just have her review the, especially the construction methodology and the containment plan as part of the permit and the pre-construction visit. And then just a quick note for the landscape plan. I know just for consistency and just to make sure that the public is clear that the pier that was originally on the site plans is not a part of this permit. So Kara, if it's okay, can we take that off the landscape plans as well, just to make sure that there's no confusion there. So yeah, mostly like housekeeping items and follow-up. And then I'll take a look at obviously the commission's comments and suggestions tonight. Chris, happy to work with you on the potential condition language for asbestos stuff, that we might want to see. And then I think that's pretty much it. And then the commission at the last hearing obviously was debating whether or not they would want to see a peer review. But since an updated wetlands resource plan has been provided, I don't know if that's still a concern, especially with regards to any compliance concerns with the Wetlands Protection Act or our bylaw. But if you guys are satisfied with that information, just I guess now's the time to weigh in on that. That's it.
I think
Charlotte,
Commissioner
there
Val
was-
specifically, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Sanjay.
I think we can put a condition in requesting that we're at least informed if there's any reportable hazardous material exfiltration. Obviously the applicants have made it clear what the breadth of our scope is, but I think we could ask to be informative of that should it ever occur, right?
Yeah, I think that's a valuable condition as well. So do we want to continue this one more time so we can get the different housekeeping items back that Charlotte mentioned? I know the peer review was initially requested by the planning board, but it did actually also, overlap into wetlands protection and some of their analysis. Or does any member of the board think otherwise?
Mr. Chair, I think it was just the stormwater was a part of Weston and
Oh, that's
Sampson.
right.
They
Yeah.
weren't looking at Wetlands Protection Act compliance.
They weren't. Yep, you're right. And I think we were satisfied actually with the resource area delineation in the new, or potentially we were.
Chair Romano.
So I don't know what the.
It's Adam Brodsky.
Yeah.
We're obviously happy to continue to tie up loose ends. My only hope is perhaps in the intervening time, I could work with Ms. Pechtel on proposed conditions so that the next public hearing, you could close the public hearing and issue an order with conditions.
I would have no objection to that. And as far as working with the third party engineer and making sure that their responses to your responses are satisfied so that we can hear any stormwater issues that may come out of that. I don't know if your team is working directly with them or not, but I know that's through the planning board and I don't want to step on their toes, but I know some municipalities discourage, the applicant or the developer from working with the third party engineer. I certainly would have no problem with you reaching out to them to make sure that those are all done.
Chair Romano,
But I don't want to
we've
step on the
been
planning
working
board.
directly with Weston and Sampson, and the
Mm.
expectation would be was that we'd have their final report prior to your next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, great. So with that, I mean, Charlotte, is that okay? Would you be willing to work with Mr. Brodsky and the development team to fashion conditions so that we could, should the board, look favorably upon this project at the next meeting, be ready to issue an order of conditions?
Yeah, if that's what the commission would like to do, I'm happy to do that. I would first encourage commissioners to message me, send me any thoughts or language, especially with the asbestos stuff or any other conditions that might be outside of my expertise. So if you guys would like to send that to me separately, I can compile everything and send it to Adam and his team for review so that it can be a more streamlined discussion at the next meeting while we wait for those other items from the peer reviewer. So I guess the next meeting
Do
is
any other-
November, oh, sorry. I was gonna say the next meeting is November 7th, so we have a couple weeks in between instead of just 1 week. So I guess, is that acceptable to the applicant to continue to November 7th? So revised documents and, I can probably, if the commission's okay with it, may or may not need a little bit more time than Halloween, which would be the deadline, because I'm going on vacation a part of next week, so. Yeah, if the commission's okay with me submitting the conditions to them the week of, maybe 3 days before, if they're okay with that.
That's okay with me.
Okay.
I would appreciate you working.
That's fine.
And does that give Adam, does that give you and the development team enough time to work with the engineer and Charlotte? I don't want to, if you need another continuance, I don't really have a problem with that. I don't know if we want to, sort of rediscuss the whole project from scratch again, if we're not going to, make significant headway. So if the 7th works, let's put it on there. But if for some reason we need to continue it again, let Charlotte know and we can sort of just do that.
Thank you, Chair Romano. If we haven't closed the loop with Weston and Sampson, I'll
Yes.
reach out to Ms. Pechdol and ask for further continuance.
Okay, great. With that, do I have a motion? Or what? I'm sorry, we're just going to continue it. So November 7th, that's all right with you?
Yeah.
All right, so this matter is continued to November 7th. Thank you all very much for your
Thank you.
time and for helping us to, figure out this sort of complex development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, it's been an hour and 40 minutes. May I suggest a 5-minute break?
sure.
Yep.
All right, let's meet back at 8. Everybody come back at 8:15 and we will move on to a further discussion of dredging the Cohasset Golf Club.
Did we lose Chris? I don't, oh, there he is. Who am I missing? 1, 2, 3. Oh, never mind. You guys are good. I thought I was missing someone. All right, you
right.
guys good?
At the risk of asking a silly question, are we all back?
Yes.
Okay. The next matter on is NOI 23-32 and stormwater permit 23-35 for pond dredging. It's the Cohasset Golf Club. We've heard this matter a couple times, and it's been continued from the last time that it was heard on, I think, September 19th. Is any member of the golf club applicant available to speak? Charlotte, anybody to be promoted?
Oh, Mr. Commissioner, I need to recuse myself.
All right, Sanjay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. Charlotte, I think you have all of us. Thank you for elevating us. For the record, my name is Sarah Stearns with Beals and Thomas, representing Cohasset Golf Club. We also have Glenn Mashazik, the golf course superintendent, as well as Ed Moyer and Dan Mount from Paragon ISG. Just to give a quick recap, we had a great conversation at our last hearing on September 19th with the commission. Ed was instrumental in providing some additional detail on the construction methodology. I think it was a very informative discussion. I think we got a lot of questions answered. We all learned a lot. There were some additional questions asked, and we did provide the commission through Charlotte a supplemental package dated October 9th with some information that was requested on this at the September 19th meeting. So I'm just gonna probably stop talking, and I can share my screen and put a picture of the plan up if the commission would like to have a look at it, just to refresh our memories, and really just turn it back to the commission with any questions remaining. And just as I mentioned, we do have both Dan and Ed here again from Paragon if there are any remaining questions about the protocol.
So I don't know if we need, unless any other commissioners would like to be refreshed, I don't know if we need to sort of repeat what's happened at the other meetings on this. Charlotte, what do you think we should be focusing on?
I guess it would be if the commissioners have any questions about the additional material that was provided. So they did provide the safety data sheets for the, I think it's the coagulant polymer that's used in the process for separating the sediments and water, I think. I don't know if the commissioners had any concerns about that. And then in terms of any additional research or articles or anything, just kind of anything about the methodology specifically. I don't think, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any of that. I know Ed and Dan had provided some additional clarification talking points via email that is in the commission's OneDrive. I did speak to someone from a fish biologist from Division of Marine Fisheries. He did not have anything either. He wasn't, aware of this new method, but, he obviously is interested to looking at it if DEP has to just review that as a minor change or an amendment to the permits that they already have. So, yeah, I don't think there's really anything out there. Obviously, there's, research on suction dredging out in, the marine environments, but not in an aquatic environment like this, like a pond. So I think those are the two items that the commission had requested. So
I did want to just add to, within the body of the letter that we had prepared, we did include the link to the YouTube video that we watched at the last hearing. If anyone would like to watch it again in their leisure, it is in there.
Thank you. I think Commissioner McIntyre, did you have, I believe maybe it was you or Commissioner Bell specifically who, had mentioned wanting the SDSs. Is there any other information we're interested in with the food safety for the food grade polymer that will be used, or any other questions that we might have there. Start with you, Commissioner Bell.
No, I think seeing the MSDA was sufficient. It looks fine to me.
Commissioner Berrigan, did you have any additional questions, comments, concerns for the applicant or for the commission to consider?
No, I don't. I read the information and I don't have any questions.
Great. Commissioner McIntyre.
No, no, I don't have anything else. Any other questions?
Okay, and I mean, either way, this whole thing is sort of so new to me, you know, with this dredging, and particularly it seems like a relatively, you know, new method of dredging, but in comparison to digging up the bottom, it seems much better as far as I could tell. So I don't really have anything additional right now. Let me ask, are you, so you're gonna have to supplement your state filing? Because I know you would receive, what is it, the 410 permit, or I'm sorry.
We did.
So you have to, yep.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. We have already received the Section 401 water quality certification
Oh,
from
401, sorry. That's
Yep.
it, yep.
From the
apologies.
DEP dredge program. So that's the division of the Department of Environmental Protection based in the Boston office that deals solely with dredge projects that are greater than 100 cubic yards. And so they look at it and do their review. It's publicly noticed, et cetera. And so that process has concluded for the mechanical dredge project that we first presented to this commission as well. So, you know, if the commission does vote in favor of the project with the hydraulic methodology and order of conditions is issued for the project, we'll contact David Wong at Mass DEP and let him know that the project has been modified, and we can submit the revised plans to his department for their review. We would also do the same thing for the Army Corps of Engineers, as there's a federal regulatory component to that, which goes hand in hand with Section 401. So there's still more to be done after this process, but you know, I think modifying the existing permit to the hydraulic methodology does not seem like an insurmountable hurdle. I think, you know, we have all the plans now, and, you know, any other recommendations that the commission may make, and we'll include all of that with our discussions with DEP.
So
I guess the one thing, oh, yeah.
The decision.
Sorry, Commissioner Bell, please.
The decision has been made to use the hydraulic method versus the mechanical method. That was unclear at the last meeting. Which
Yeah, I think the way we ended the discussion was that the commission was heavily leaning toward the hydraulic methodology, and with Ed's information provided on the detail of the construction and how it all works. I think, you know, after hearing all the input and it seemed as if the club is understanding that that's the preferred methodology at this stage. So Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the club is amenable to that and moving forward with that as planned.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we weren't selecting one. We were just, you presented your plan, and I think it seemed better. It seemed like a better option to us. We weren't trying to really steer you one way or the other either, though. But that's great that we decided we're solidifying that. Is there anything in the, and so you've submitted additional materials. Should you be required to update anything, whether it's via the state or the feds, with the hydraulic methodology that you've now decided to go with, and that impacts what we've approved? Of course, you'll come back to us and let us know so that, you know, we can amend our permit
Definitely.
following that.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Charlotte, do you want to discuss any possible conditions for this project?
Yeah, pull those up. Okay, so this has changed quite a bit since I wrote it a long time ago. I think just a quick clarification, you don't need to de-water since you're obviously putting the water back, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just, it's common sense, but I'll just keep it here. So I'll just go through these quickly that, you know, it sounds like alternative B, the hydraulic dredging as proposed in the revised NOI is approved under this order. The alternative A, mechanical dredging is not approved, and then site dewatering is not allowed. And then the order permit shall be contingent upon, sorry, there's two. So order and stormwater permit shall be contingent upon the applicant obtaining all their federal, local permits, other boards, et cetera. No construction work shall occur until all applicable permits have been obtained. So I think this can apply to the amended 401 and Army Corps permits. And then obviously following up on that, any changes to the plans as a result of those reviews shall be submitted back to conservation in writing to confirm whether or not an amended NOI is needed. No revised work is allowed until we review the changes. And then prior to any dredging activity, I'll take this out. Prior to any dredging activity, all turbidity curtains, erosion controls, entrances, hydraulic dredge setup around the pond, as sediment disposal area shall be inspected by the agent and/or conservation chair or interested commissioners prior to dredging activity. I think in previous meetings we had talked about if any commissioners want to also go there, since it's a new method. I'm sure some of us might be curious, so I put that in there. Prior to any dredging, contracting monitor shall be stationed around the pond as directed to inspect the pond for presence of wildlife. So just, you know, just make sure before you start sucking everything up that, you know, steering clear of that. Relocated to, you know, any wildlife should be removed and relocated to near down or upgrading areas away from the projected project site by any licensed professionals with the direction from state and federal agencies. Obviously, we do not want, of course, wildlife to be transported. That is illegal, so it's not allowed without commission, state, and federal approval. Any modifications from Division of Marine Fisheries to the proposed turbidity curtains or erosion control measures shall be followed as part of this order. I don't think they had anything else, but I don't know what they're going to think about the amended plan, so I put it in there. I don't know how much of a concern this is now that we're going with hydraulic dredging instead of mechanical dredging. There were some concerns about some of the vegetation in the pond. There's a small little tree island in the pond, and then any of the bank stuff that was going to be modified with mechanical dredging. I don't know how much of that's actually a concern now. So if the commission wants me to keep these two conditions, 7 and 8, about trees around the pond need to be inspected, and then any trees within the pond that are permanently damaged or removed shall be replaced and instructed by the agent or commission with native species similar to the surrounding species in the area. So I don't know with hydraulic dredging if that's a concern. So I'll just pause real quickly. Does anybody think that's a concern? Do you want them taken out?
We might as well, excuse me, we might as well leave the condition if it's not a concern. No, it doesn't, sort of like a, if they're not going to be adversely impacted by the hydraulic dredging, the condition won't have any.
Okay, won't have any,
issues,
yeah.
So we might as well leave it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then these are from previous discussions, just that a spill contingency plan be provided to the commission prior to the starting of dredging work shall address prevention management of potential release of oil hazardous chemicals from pre and post construction activities, shall be presented to workers at the site and enforced. The plan should include, not be limited to, refueling of machinery, storage of fuels, potential on-site activity releases. All BMPs as recommended by DEP in the ENF form pertaining to air quality and solid waste management shall be followed as part of this order. We've done that for a lot of other larger projects where they have those requirements. No dredging equipment or materials shall be stored within the pond or near the wetlands bank and shall be moved from the site to the appropriate approved upland location on the property at the end of the workday. I think that's feasible with the hydraulic dredging. This was from mechanical dredging. So is that still feasible for this type of methodology, just to make sure it's not storing, you know, it's not in the pond long term?
No, the dredge will stay in the pond until the dredging's done.
Okay, so is that okay with the?
We would have to crane that out every night.
Okay, so is that okay with the commission that you guys are okay with deleting this then, since it will have to stay there until the work is done? Are you guys okay with that?
I think that makes sense to remove the condition. Can I ask how many days, Dan, that it will take to perform the work?
I'll defer to Ed on that. I think he's got the work plan.
I'm not holding you to an exact number, but just sort of, if it takes some days longer, some days shorter, just to give me a ballpark about how long the dredging equipment's going to remain in the pond.
Ed, do you have that in front of you? I didn't pull that one up.
Well, we can move on if somebody wants to shoot him a text or something, and maybe we
Okay.
could,
He's on mute.
get it before.
I think if it's a long-term concern, I'm happy to talk, Dan and Ed, I'm happy to
Sure.
talk to you guys about that. But I think if it's there for the amount of time that's expected, I'm okay with it if you guys are. So I'll just keep going. Yeah, all BMPs from the 401 certification and mitigate downstream impacts, et cetera. I can take out dewater. Shall be followed as part of this order. Same thing with removal and transportation of dredged materials. I know this is very repetitive, but a lot of this is from the ENF certificate. So sorry, please bear with me. This was also a request from DEP. So I put it in here for us as well, that a copy of all bathymetric surveys of the dredged area within the irrigation pond depicting post-dredge conditions around the 401 shall be submitted to conservation as part of the request for a certificate of compliance and may be included in the as-built plans. So that was a request from DEP. So I think it's good for us to just have that too.
I think the as-built, excuse
Yep.
me, Charlotte, I think the as-built will almost be limited to the bathymetric survey. That's what,
Okay.
there's really not going to be
There's not much, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say maybe, I don't know.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's going to be in the as-built, yeah.
Yeah.
And then future maintenance dredging not authorized under this order, and then inspections for pre-construction dredging, and then any potential restoration if needed, and then final inspection. So should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, sorry, a lot of this was definitely from all the permits you guys already got. I'm pretty much modifying it, just saying, yes, we like that too. But I guess, does commissioners, anything that I missed here, anything you guys would want to see?
I know alternative B. We might want to change that language even for the first condition. Is it really laid out as alternative A and B anymore in the most recent set of materials that were supplied?
Okay.
Yeah.
I can just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay. Yep.
Do any other commissioners have any thoughts, added conditions, amendments to these conditions?
I'll just slowly.
Sounds like I'm not hearing any. And this document is the condition. It's the conditions. You've amended them some while we've been in this hearing, but it's what was submitted as part of the. Or excuse me, what's in the folder that we've reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. If no other commissioners have any further questions for the developer or for the golf club and their team, there's no more comments regarding the conditions. We have a moment.
I don't see any questions from the public either.
And there's no requested variance or anything on this. So do we have a motion on notice of intent 23-32 from any of the commissioners?
Yes, I move to issue an order of conditions for NOI 2332 for the Cohasset Golf Club for pond dredging with the conditions that have been displayed on the screen and entered into the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
and Valerio Romano, aye. Do I have a motion or entertain a motion on stormwater permit 23-35.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I believe you just mentioned variance and that just reminded me, I believe we did request a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer
we?
zone. Just as a matter of getting in and out of the pond.
Oh, okay.
And just temporary
We'll tackle that.
disturbance for the
Yeah.
setup and then, you know.
Yeah, construction period only, but it is in the application, so thanks for mentioning it.
Okay, hold on, can I just have a brief moment then?
Ordinarily, the order we do these in is the order of conditions, then the
Variance
water
last.
permit, and we save the variance for last.
Thank you.
Yep. I was just wanted to bring up the variance request in the application. My own. Well, let's keep going. Do I have a motion on stormwater permit 23-35?
Yes, I'll move to issue a stormwater permit 2335 for Cohasset Golf Club. With do we have
Second, anyone?
Do we have any conditions other than what we discussed, Charlotte? These are all.
These can just be put in the stormwater permit just
Yeah.
as a matter of consistency, but yeah, mostly a lot of them pertain to the wetlands permit, but there are a few, of course, that are kind of
Right.
same.
So with the conditions that are shown on screen and entered into the meeting minutes.
Anyone second?
Second,
Roll call vote, Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
and Valerio Romano, aye. So both the NOI and the stormwater permit passed unanimously 4-0-0 with Commissioner Fernando abstaining. And now it looks like we have a variance request for work within the 50-foot buffer and a variance for dredge projects for alteration of greater than 1,000 square feet.
Yes.
There they are. Do I have a motion on issuing variances to allow this work to take place?
I will make a motion to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer with our standard conditions.
And for the greater
should we-
than 1,000 square foot alteration.
Oh, yes, and for the, greater than 1,000-foot disturbance.
Second,
Any second?
second,
Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
and Valerio Romano, aye. So the two variances are also approved 4-0-0. With that, the matter's closed. And thanks very much for bringing this forward. And something of at least a new project for me. And it was interesting to see the different methodologies. And I'm happy that you went the direction that you did.
Thank you all so much for all of your time, and we'll copy Charlotte on the state and federal permitting discussion, so she'll have a record of it at the office as well.
Okay, thank
And
you.
and please come back to us if something, in state or federal, permits amend what we've approved tonight.
Of course.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
The next we have continued from October 3rd, NOI, a 3-year extension request for NOI 21-30 at 37 Parker Ave. Is anyone here from the applicant team?
Yes, Fiona Vardy from Foth.
Hi, Ms. Vardy.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for your time.
Very well. Yeah, thanks for your patience tonight.
No problem. All interesting to hear. So
So let us know what's going on.
This is for 37 Parker Avenue in Cohasset. We withdrew the amendment request, and we are just going with a planting plan for the originally approved order of conditions in 2021. And Paul has reseeded and has received the plants for the area. So he used a Yes, I had forwarded some pictures to Charlotte. So the seeds are already taking, and he used let me just make sure I have this right, a New England wet mix, a wetland seed mix. And the plantings that have arrived are Spartina patens, which I believe is salt meadow cordgrass. So he is planting that as soon as possible, and we are requesting a 3-year extension in the event that the plants don't take and that he has to retry again in the spring. Are there any questions so far? Just to make sure.
None for me. Please continue. I was just actually reviewing the previously approved. So please go on, Ms. Vardy.
Okay. So this is, I mean, that was basically the update that I had. We are no longer proposing an amendment to basically recirculate the stormwater. We're just going with the originally approved order of conditions.
And Fiona, just as a quick clarification question, so obviously, you know, there was some ponding that was observed last year. So is it in your expertise that if this is able to fully revegetate, we will not see that as part of the original design?
Yeah, so Paul mentioned that it's the ponding that was occurring was not because of rainfall. It was just because of high tides and during storm surges. So he is confident that the plantings will hold and retain their place during those events.
Thank you.
Charlotte, I'm having trouble finding them, but I remember directly that there was an abutter question in writing on this matter. I just wanted to make sure that it was at least addressed to some extent. Do you have that available?
Yes. Let me find it real quick. Yes, I think the original concern was regarding the ponding from an abutter. We had a previous site visit earlier this spring. I'm sorry, not last year, but early this spring to discuss that and what the plan for that would be. It did seem like in the summer it may have attracted some stuff, some bugs. Became a storage area for trailers and boats while attracting mosquitoes. So I think he was also concerned with the 3-year original proposal, but I think that was already clarified. And Fiona, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Carlos did speak to the abutter about that for the purposes of the 3-year request. And, you know, obviously you've already put down the seed mix, so I don't think you're obviously going to need 3 years to do the rest of the work, but the 3 years would definitely be, I think, to monitor this area for a little bit and see if the area is successful. But I don't know if there's any pending concerns from this original letter, but this is when the amendment was submitted, but now it's been withdrawn.
Yeah, so Carlos and Paul have spoken to this abutter, and especially with the concern about the 3-year extension, we just have requested it because of the standard timeframe. And in the event, to your point, that he needs to do any replanting, reseeding, anything like that to improve the area further. So yes, we have spoken to the abutter and have worked it out.
Okay, thank you for confirming. That's good to know. Mr. Chair,
So
does that answer
essentially by
your question?
withdrawing, yeah, I think it does. By withdrawing the request and all you're asking for, or all you're asking for now is the extension. Is there anything in the existing order of conditions that is not applicable, given the fact that it's ultimately what we're doing here is sort of letting nature reclaim what was originally permitted?
Yeah, with the amendment request that was withdrawn, I don't know if we have the ability to modify any conditions. I mean, obviously the original plan had a rain garden and we wanted, I think in terms of the special conditions, I can pull up the order, but we wanted, you know, maintenance on the rain garden, like details with removing invasives and stuff.
Well,
but
yeah.
you know, that would no longer be applicable, obviously, with this, you know, path forward.
I get that, but there was a previously issued, okay,
Yeah, I can pull up the conditions,
order
but
of conditions from 2021,
Yep.
right?
yeah.
And
So these were the 3
When do-
conditions. 55 through 57.
okay,
These pertain to the parking lot, 56 and 57, and then the last one, I'm sorry, 55, 56, the last one in terms of inspected for invasive species. I think this would still somewhat pertain, like obviously while this area is revegetating, we don't want to see Phragmites obviously taking over the area. So I think in order to give the seed mix and the Spartina a chance to revegetate, I would imagine this condition, even though the language about a rain garden isn't applicable, but the general intent of this condition is still applicable while we wait for that area to revegetate, just making sure it's not overrun.
so I guess, I mean, so is there anything that we need to do, given the order of conditions that was issued back in 2021, to, you know, to allow, I'm just a little confused procedurally as to the best way to
Yeah,
move this forward.
I'm honestly, I don't know if you can revise the conditions as part of an extension request. Maybe you can if you're going to allow the permit to continue another 3 years. Usually we do that through an amended NOI request, but that was withdrawn. Like there's nowhere on the form, for example, to specify any amendments to the conditions. I think maybe Fiona, if the applicant's open to it, we can modify it with the extension request if you're okay with it. But I'm just saying procedurally, I don't know if that's a part of an extension process. It's really just to extend the time frame of the permit, not the conditions.
Well, are there any conditions that are not going to be complied with?
I guess in terms of the rain garden, it's no longer going to be a rain garden anymore, right?
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's something to consider if you're going to extend the permit. I mean, you're going to see an area revegetate, so you just won't see a specific rain garden that would need to be maintained with an O&M plan.
So I'm happy to see that Commissioner Bell just unmuted, because I would like to have his advice here as to, is there anything that you think that we should do, Tom, being the previous chair here?
I don't think a rain garden is feasible here because it gets flooded often enough by the tide. And what's more, there's a big stand of Phragmites there, and it's going to own that spot. There's no doubt
And
about
I'm not insisting that anything different happened. There's just an existing order of conditions that is now, you know, not going to be, you know, complied with, but it's out there.
Yeah, 57 is I don't see that as being a viable condition, because there is going to be Phragmites is going to move right in there. It's going to be a perpetual removal and disturbance there. And from what I saw, Phragmites itself would be a very effective means of filtering out any sediment that comes off that parking lot. Probably more effective than Spartina.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just having the area vegetated is a win.
Yeah.
I think this would be also discussed as part of a future certificate of compliance request. So a lot of this could definitely be discussed in terms of if the commission thinks that, you know, these conditions either are not applicable anymore and or is the project compliant overall. So I mean, I think a lot of this would definitely be applicable at the end, but we're obviously talking about it now since we want the area to revegetate.
I mean, the objective here is to prevent sediment from washing off the parking lot into the Gulf River. And the Phragmites are going to be very effective at that. And that's just they're so dense. And this Spartina is just not going to be able to compete with this, with the Phragmites. So just from a practical standpoint, I mean, they'd have to be removing Phragmites every year, maybe twice a year. And so we get into a situation of, do you mow this little spot twice a year? And I mean, that's a disturbance in and of itself. And I don't think you're accomplishing anything by doing that.
I'm just trying to understand and follow, like, are we trying to figure out the procedural issues of a previous order conditions, or are we unhappy with the plan? Like I'm sort of like, if I think of what Charlotte you just said, it's like, if we extend the order conditions, we let the applicant go ahead and try to revegetate it with the plant species they've selected. You know, when it comes back to the previous order conditions, if I'm hearing you right, like we can choose to close the order of conditions and recognize that some of the previous conditions are no longer applicable. And then we have sort of closure, whether it works or doesn't, like they have 3 years to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then hopefully whether Phragmites wins or their plant species wins, at some point it'll be vegetated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's correct as far as unless everyone else isn't on the same page, but that's what I was thinking too, you know.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't trying to affect the way it was going to get done. I was just confused procedurally what we do, I guess, particularly with 57, to put a fine point on it. And so what would be the triggering event for them to come back for a COC?
I think when the site is considered permanently stabilized and all site work is completed, they would file an as-built plan with a COC request, with just probably noting the difference in the last condition that was stated on the order of conditions originally, that, you know, due to previous discussions as part of an extension request and, you know, site visits, et cetera, this condition was not complied with for the following reasons. So that could all be clearly documented in a COC request, because that's what they're supposed to do and required to do anyway. And I think, you know, I would hope that there's at least a couple of us still around who would remember that and say, oh yes, we had those discussions. We understand this last condition is no longer applicable. So, you know, as part of a COC, you would evaluate that in the future.
I mean, we have a video and minutes here, so it's somebody's memorialized.
So it's there.
Yeah, let's not rely on my memory.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, is there any further discussion or anything else any other questions for the developer? I mean, with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the requested 3-year extension for NOI 21-30 for 37 Parker Ave.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Bell? Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre?
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Commissioner Fernando?
Sanjay Fernando, aye.
And Valerio Romano, aye. You have 5 unanimous vote. That matter is that extension is approved and this matter is closed.
Oh, sorry,
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chair, can we just, can we also extend the variance request to work in the 50? Because this area is right up against the marsh.
Yep. I'll make a motion to extend the variance request for work up against the within the 50 for the additional 3 years, run concurrently with the 3-year extension on NOI 21-30. Any second?
Second.
Let's take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Commissioner Fernando,
Sanju Fernando, aye.
and Valerio Romano, aye. With that, I think we will close this matter, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.
Good night. Thank you. Great. Cool.
All right, so, yes, sorry. Charlotte.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so there were a couple enforcement orders. The first one is for 34 Flintlock Ridge Road for a wetlands alteration. This is, sort of been continued, continued from October 3rd. Charlotte, how should we proceed?
All right, so I just have an update for you guys, and it's a good one. So as of today, I did go out to the site with, so the property owner hired Morse Engineering to assist with surveying the wetland area that was altered and the buffer zones. We went out to the site with Brad and Jeff today. The retainer, I think, for the survey was just paid today, so the Morse is going to get a survey crew out there hopefully in a few weeks. And we did go to the site from, as of like April this year, the fill was not entirely removed, as you guys may remember. You can definitely see that the area is starting to revegetate, which is good. We saw a lot of jewelweed out there, so that's a native wetland species. But, you can clearly see the clumps of where the fill and rock and even a little bit of asphalt debris were there. So that will need to be removed. Brad had some suggestions for that. So once the survey crew can get a plan or a survey of the site, Jeff and Brad will work together to provide a restoration plan to us. We do think that there's still a little bit of time to get us a plan, hopefully within the next month, 4 to 6 weeks, come back on November 21st, which is our second meeting in November, and look at this plan and even potentially start some of the fill removal and complete that before the wet season in the spring. Brad and Jeff both seem pretty confident that you can still remove most of the fill. You may or may not still need a mini rubber excavator, but a lot of the fill could also be removed by hand by a few people. So yep, just waiting on that. So good progress there. And the owner obviously is fully informed, and I just told her I'd update you guys tonight. So, but yeah, this
Great.
was
Any
the
questions for
contractor who
Charlotte on-
abandoned her, so yeah.
Yeah, the saga of a project of.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Thank you, Charlotte.
Oh,
No, I
okay.
was just asking the rest of the commission if there were any other questions for you on this sort of this saga that's been going on. We've mentioned pretty much ritually every 2 weeks for the last 6 months.
Yeah, are you guys okay with putting it tentatively on November 21st and not for next meeting? Because they're definitely going to need some time to get survey crews out there and give us a restoration plan.
Yeah, no problem.
Definitely.
Perfect. And that was it for that one.
And the next enforcement order is for 100 Whitehead Road, the beach alterations. Charlotte?
Yep. I will just keep Adam here if he would like to add anything, but I told him I would give you guys an update for this one as well. So Adam informed me that the applicant has hired Merrill engineers and land surveyors to go out and do something similar, get a survey of the site with existing conditions, and start the process for working through a notice of intent with restoration and a management plan. So Adam, not sure if you have any additional updates from what you told me, but I think that was pretty much it, right?
Oh, as part of that scope, the trust has hired ECR to review the conditions of the beach, address restoration, and if we're going to propose beach management, to assist in preparing a notice of intent to do that. And with respect to the floats were removed for the season, essentially eliminating that issue of non-compliance. And I've advised the trust that they can't reinstall those floats next year unless they strictly comply with their license requirements, or again, goes through the process of amending all of their various permits to allow the reconfigured floats.
And did they put the floats in an upland area or somewhere that's obviously not in a resource area?
I don't know the answer to that question, Cheryl. I will inquire.
Okay.
I was scared to ask how the floats are removed and where they're being stored. So I appreciate you doing it, Charlotte.
Oh, thank you, Adam. We appreciate the updates. And would you also like to tentatively just keep pushing it to further meetings like 11/21? Obviously, I assume Merrill and ECR are going to need more than a few weeks to look at this. So
Yeah, unfortunately, it takes now weeks to even get on the list for survey.
Yep.
So if you have any children looking for a profession,
Yeah.
go into surveying, who are now the rock stars of the engineering world.
Yep. How about, I'm not sure how quickly that work can get done, obviously, but how about, at least for now, instead of, maybe we could continue it to, let's see, maybe the last meeting of the year in December, if you're okay with that. I feel like that's definitely expecting, the timeframe. So no, December 19th. There's November 7th, November 21st, December 5th, and December 19th.
I'll take as much time as the Conservation Commission is willing to grant.
Mr. Chair, commissioners, what do you
Let
think?
me ask, is there any ongoing harm to the beach that could be alleviated or mitigated? Should we, hear this sooner for the force the matter, or is it, give them as much time as they need to, what do you think, Charlotte?
I haven't been out to the site recently, so I'm not sure in terms of immediate restoration what may or may not be needed, but at least judging from the aerial photos, obviously the hopper device was utilized again this year just to kind of do that giant loop on the beach and probably move the stones and rocks around. So I'm not sure what restoration would be needed now. I don't think any vegetation was removed, but I'd have to go out to the site to confirm. So I don't know if you guys would like me to do that, but I think for now, my first thought is maybe not. I think you could probably just wait it out.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Commissioner, I just had a sort of maybe basic question, like, the applicant or the trust won't be doing anything more throughout this process, right? So, okay.
Now, we're subject to a cease and desist, and so there's no further work and presumably no use of that beach since we're now entering the winter season.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
I'm fine with whatever date then, unless any other commissioner feels otherwise. So December 19th it is. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Adam.
you.
Thanks.
Good night. Now we have a COC for NOI 2303 and stormwater permit, also 2303 for 49 Border Street.
Hi, Brian.
Does any member? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yep. So we have Brian Greenberg, who was the general contractor overseeing the project. And then I don't see the applicants in the audience, Brian. I don't know if they're going to join us or.
Yeah, I think they were gonna. I just texted them.
Okay.
They may not need to be here. I can kind of run through everything and answer any questions the commission has, but I did text them.
Okay. Yeah, I can start, and then Brian, feel free to jump in on anything
Sure.
else. So I'll just pull up the approved plan just so the commission can see. We did have a few some minor modifications. This is the current plan that was approved. Just as a quick note, I think earlier this summer the applicant had also asked permission from the commission to switch to a paver, a pervious paver driveway instead of porous pavement. And there was actually a slight improvement in the drainage conditions. So we did administratively approve that as well. And the long-term maintenance plan was updated to reflect that, which the applicants will record administratively as part of a COC for the stormwater permit. So just wanted to note that too. So this is the approved plan. It was, rebuilding an existing home, raising it up on concrete piers to be above the floodplain to comply with building code changes. The drainage was installed per plan. So there was a crushed stone trench around the perimeter of the home that was installed per plan. And then, as I just mentioned, they switched to a pervious paver driveway. So still a pervious setup for the driveway. So all the stormwater stuff, as far as I'm concerned, was built. And then they did have a slightly wider crushed stone area here in front of, the border street. So that was all installed per plan. There are a few plantings that weren't installed, so I think Brian and I can talk about that more, but I'll just go through some of the other minor things. They did add a small Cape Cod berm up along the border of Border Street to kind of keep that gravel in place. And then a cobble entrance was just added to the front here, and I can also pull up the as-built so you guys can see that too. Slight deviations there. So the little cobble apron, the crushed stone, a little bit bigger, and then they just added that Cape Cod berm. And then, yeah, mostly the thing was just, the differences in the plantings. So they did install in the 100-foot buffer per the approved planting plan 5 junipers, common junipers within the buffer zone. There were some other plantings, shrubs, I think there were inkberries and stuff proposed up here, but I did walk the site with Brian. This is a Norway maple forest, and there really wasn't space to put them. They're also outside the 100. So I advised Brian that those are probably not as important as the plantings within the 100. So the plantings in the 100 that were mostly installed were right atop this wall here. They were different from the plan. So they did install 9 endless summer hydrangeas and 9 Carl Forster grasses in this little landscape area here in the 50-foot buffer. And so that was different from the approved planting plan, which I can pull up if the commissioners want to see it, but it just had more of a variety of native shrubs and grasses and perennials within the buffer zones. So I think Brian has more information about that. And then just the last thing is more of just a slight tweak. So this retaining wall right here was supposed to be built outside the 50. There was a little bit of an inching into the 50-foot buffer. However, in the spot right here where the wall was pushed out a tad, there were existing stone steps per the original plan that were supposed to be reconfigured, as you see on the as-built here. So there was always impervious surface in this spot right here. So not really a change in impervious, just a note that the retaining wall just stuck out just, I would say, about a foot from the 50-foot buffer. But I guess, Brian, do you have anything to add to that with the plantings or with the wall or anything like that?
Sorry, the applicant the homeowner was texting me. That's I'm just texting him back. I apologize for being
no
rude.
worries. Are they on the call? I can promote them. Are they in the audience?
I think he's gonna log on now.
Okay.
I'm just sending the link, but so thanks, Charlotte. I appreciate that summary. So as Charlotte mentioned, commissioners, the only change was the plantings along the front were a little different from what was on the approved landscape plan. I think it was just a case of homeowners, lay people, I think sometimes have a difficult time picturing what a site is going to look like post-construction. And when they went through with the landscaper, just decided to do a little bit fewer because it is a pretty crowded area in front there. Given that we didn't remove, there was 0 vegetation removed as part of this project. It was a raise and rebuild on an existing footprint. There was no vegetation on the site outside of the footprint of the house or anywhere in the work area pre-construction. So, my hope is that the commission will consider that, planting the junipers and then the plantings that the homeowners did do as hopefully a net positive on the site. We're certainly, obviously, we're at your direction. And if you don't agree, then we'll certainly act to rectify that. I hope Charlotte would agree. I've tried to be proactive with the few other small changes, where, you know, the location of the wall and the driveway and getting administrative approval. And perhaps a mea culpa is owed that, you know, I should have been proactive about the plantings as well. But in any case, again, happy to hear your thoughts and inputs. Otherwise, I think everything was just built to plan and spec, and happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Bell, do you have any questions or concerns with the as-built?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Berrigan?
No, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner McIntyre?
No, no.
Commissioner Fernando?
No questions.
Charlotte, is there anything else you should be that you think we should be thinking about when it comes to the differences between what was originally permitted and the as-built?
I think just reiterating what Brian said, I mean, this is a small lot, that was 100% disturbed. There was no vegetation that was removed with this project. So, I mean, having said that, this landscaping plan was certainly an impressive improvement to the site from what was originally there. So, I mean, within the 100-foot buffer, you know, at least for me, I prioritized more of the focus on putting in those 5 junipers on the property border that you see up there to the north. But I mean, it's up to the commission. I mean, if you want to see the plantings in the 100 or not, but you know, I think I would just obviously repetitively note that this site did not remove vegetation to construct the new home.
You were saying there was what, Norway maple there? Is that so they would
Oh yeah, so this area up here, it was all Norway maples and like woody overgrowth. So you would need to do some, you know, some work up there to put the inkberries in. Actually, there was 1 inkberry in the 100, so that one wasn't. None of these were planted, the inkberries. It was just the 5 junipers and the whatever this PV is, the Panicum vertigum. This was not installed. So yeah, the 5 junipers were put in. The hydrangeas were put in right here. And then they did some grasses here. So the rest of the plantings that you see listed here were not installed, but at least outside of the 100, you know, we don't obviously have as much of a say in terms of landscape plantings, but this area here was a really tight, dark, overgrown space with Norway maples and a bunch of ivy and, you know, weeds and stuff that would have needed, you know, a lot of work to put those plantings in. So at least these I didn't see as important as, you know, anything in the 100, but I definitely did tell Brian and the, you know, applicants indirectly, obviously, that, you know, it's up to the commission to verify compliance with the project plans. So it's a judgment call, I think, for you guys if you wanted to see more plantings or not.
Commissioner McIntyre, do you have anything
pretty
else?
tight.
Yeah.
Seems pretty tight for that amount of plantings to begin with, so I think it's an improvement. Looking at the near map, it was just lawn prior to this project, so I think some shrubs, and any number of shrubs better than just manicured lawn, so I'm all right with it.
Okay, so doesn't sound like there's any, excuse me.
Yeah, if
It
you
doesn't
guys are
sound
all
like there
set
any
with,
other yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Charlotte. I mean,
oh, no,
it
it's
seems like
okay.
we
I
might
was
be
just
ready
gonna,
to entertain a motion. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, if you guys don't have concerns, the ongoing conditions I would suggest are our standard, you know, number 40 and 41. no use of obviously herbicides, chemicals, fertilizers, et cetera, in the buffer zone, and maintaining the plantings that were installed, the junipers, the hydrangeas, and the grasses for 3 full growing seasons or being replaced.
Yep.
With that in mind and no further concerns, do we have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance? Chair, I'd entertain one.
I'll make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance.
And it's for NOI 2303 and stormwater permit 2303.
For yes, sorry, for NOI stormwater permit 2303.
You guys okay with the, are you guys okay with the conditions 40 and 41 for the order of conditions, COC? Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure.
Sorry,
Do we have a second?
Second.
Why don't we restate? Okay, great. Let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bell,
Tom Bell, aye.
Commissioner Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Commissioner Fernando,
Sanjay Fernando, aye.
Valerio Romano, aye. So that vote passes unanimously, and that matter's closed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our public agenda. Charlotte, agent update.
Awesome. Okay, I'll go through these quickly so we can end a little early. Construction updates, 102 Howe Road. They finished the pool, the house, the driveway, everything, but they still need to, I would say, fix some things on the site. You know, this was a very tricky site with a lot of blasting. I was down here so many times for this site and it was just a mess. So there is some restoration, in my professional opinion, that was needed. So I did walk the site with Scott Garvin from Sean Papish Landscape Architecture. We talked about some seed mix and some additional plantings that we think would need to go in to further stabilize the site. There's a slope that kind of abuts and wraps the driveway that goes downhill, and that slope is not stabilized because mulch was basically put on ledge and the plantings were put on that, and you can see where the erosion is. There was some disturbance from when National Grid came in and took down some trees, which I was notified about, but it, you know, with the blasting and everything else, with the amount of rock that was out there and all the debris that was out there, we need to fix the site. So I am working with them on that before they file for a COC. Atlantica, they've, you know, continued their demo and restoration work within the building. They're moving to the, I think it's the western side, I believe. And as Nino had mentioned in the previous hearing tonight, they have been sending me photos of that, of containing the site with netting and working from the inside. So that's been good so far. 87 and 124 Elm Street, that one they are working on filing. I did get the COC. I think some plantings just need to be installed on 87. So I'll go back out. I did like a pre-final inspection last week. So I'll go back out with the as-built and do more of a thorough site visit with that once the plantings are all installed. The Beechwood playground and courts, as you guys may have seen, look like they're pretty much done. This project did not need a stormwater permit because the calculations were under 5,000 and under 500 square foot increase, net increase of impervious surface. The playground blue and yellow color stuff that you see is actually technically porous, so spongy, so it's not a hard surface. And then last but not least, 83 Spring Street. This one's going to be interesting. They're still waiting on a building permit. There were some modifications to the plan. So Valerio and Chris, I'll send those to you guys. There is a clarification on the gas installation. So apparently there's already a conduit line that was installed 20 years ago under the driveway. The gas does not exist on the site in terms of connecting to the site. So they do need to make a small incision at the front of the driveway to sleeve in the rest of the gas line. So I will just make sure I have the plans for that. I made very clear that there were no alterations allowed to the driveway. So no trench work, no excavations. It is not an exempt activity under our bylaws. So none of that will happen without any further approval. So if they're just leaving it in, if you guys are okay with that, I'm good with it, but it is a slight clarification that there was gas installed, just not completely, so they just have to sleeve that line in. But yeah, no excavation will be allowed. And then other updates, 35 Nichols. I'm working with town council to respond to the court's summons from the plaintiff, who's the immediate abutter at 39 Nichols Road. I gave them all the documents and we're just gonna go from there. So we have until November 19th, I think, to respond. So I'll just make sure we do that within that time frame. I think it's 90 days. And then the next process that has to happen is once we submit our response, the plaintiff has 30 days to respond and state their case. Then we have 30 days to respond and state our case, as does the applicant of 35 Nichols Road, who are also a defendant. And then once all that paperwork is submitted to the court then looks at all that paperwork and goes through the hearing. Town council will be there, so I will not be there unless absolutely necessary, obviously. I mean, I will help town council prepare, but a lot of this pretty much it's going to be tied up for 6 months to possibly even a year. That's what town council said. So it's unfortunate, but we did our best with this one and we'll see where it goes. And then
Charlotte, I think you did, I may not have bookmarked it. Did we have a OneDrive with like basically everything that has to do with this matter?
No, I will put that in there for you guys. I don't have town council's like submission yet, but I did want to put that in there. So I'll add a OneDrive folder for that. And I'll just keep you guys updated.
For the litigation aspect, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just for everything in case anybody gets bored.
Yeah, this
wants
is.
to read through it. Like
Yep.
me.
Yep. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I quickly summarizing again, they're bringing up an issue from 2018 that they think that we were not sufficient in resolving before issuing another permit to do the pool. And just so you guys are aware, I did try to comb the town files for any permitting that may have been pulled in 2018. There was permitting prior to 2018 that was pulled to redo the existing home. So we do have stormwater permit for that. That was, I don't know if it was closed out or not, but it was pulled and issued. But in 2018, they did addition work. They did that sports court at the front of the house. So there definitely was stuff that happened. You can see it on Nearmap. I don't have any enforcement record from my predecessor, so I don't think it ever went before the commission as a show cause or anything like that. I went through the minutes, could not find anything, no building permit. So whatever was done to the house in 2018 and whatever that sports court little thing, that basketball thing was built, I don't see any town record of it ever being approved. So, but like, you know, as you guys saw.
Sometimes
Yeah.
It's litigation about
Yeah.
us. So, and
Yeah.
being an attorney,
I mean,
I might,
they added
I
that
like to waste
additional
a few minutes
drainage
here
to
and
the
there and
plan.
read through it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we
Yeah.
did our best. We asked the applicant to look into it. They agreed. They added another dry well to the plan. We approved it, and apparently that still wasn't good enough. So. And then last but not least, I can just keep this on the agenda. I think some of you asked for more time to look at the hazardous and administrative tree policy stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm all for it. Just let me know what you guys want to do. A lot of towns do it different ways. So, I mean, I would even do something to take out invasive trees, you know, like something that could be replaced with native species. And, you know, it's up to you guys. So just, you know, whatever you guys want to look at. I did pull a lot of towns that I thought were relevant. I'm always happy to look at other towns. So yeah, I'll just keep this on the agenda.
Yeah,
until,
sent a few versions.
Yep.
You sent me or us a few different towns. Yeah, let's keep bringing that up. I the last couple of weeks have been pretty hectic, but I would like an opportunity to maybe even help you cobble some of that stuff together and see if we can make a nice one for Cohasset that you know. So yeah, let's just keep bringing that up unless there's some absolute urgency. You know, let's just get some more time to take a look at that.
Okay. Yeah. That was it, at least for my updates. That had some 48-hour issues, and I think Kathy, you had a few as well. So do you want to move on to that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Just a couple of things I noticed around town, and I was wondering, and one of them was 137 Nichols Road at the corner of Atlantic Ave and Nichols. We approved some work for them to landscaping and to create another building. And I was just wondering if anybody has gone to check it out, or because they're, you know, right in the buffer zone
Yeah.
and they're doing a lot of work
I
there.
didn't know they started, Kathy, so that's good to know. I can check right now if they had recorded their order first. I hope they did. Yep, so they did record their order. Now I can't remember if I was sent site photos. They may have sent, maybe I think Sean may or may not have sent me some photos. But yeah, I haven't been out there, so I'm happy to look at it. But did at least from what you saw, did it look like what you remember, or did anything look different? Or
You know, I didn't go on the property. I was with I was taking somebody to the doctor, so I didn't
Yeah.
really have time to stop. But I've driven by there several times, and they've been
Okay.
working on it. And I've been down at Sandy Beach. I didn't look at it closely, but they've been working on it, and they've been, you know, right in the buffer there, and which, you know, they had approval for. But just thought, given the location that they're at and the sensitivity of that area, I was just wondering if they had all the right protections, and just to see what was going on.
yeah, I definitely didn't. This was, I think, when I was still recovering. I didn't see the erosion barriers myself. I'm pretty sure they sent me photos, but I will double check that, and I'll check in with them and see what's going on down there.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then I was just wondering about the house at the end of Black Horse Lane. I don't know if is it 94, if it's next to 94.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, not the house, but at the end of Black Horse Lane, the property right at the end on the right side is all cleared. And I didn't remember if they had approval for that, or.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my things too. And I think we do still have Nino on the line too to clarify anything. So I can give you guys, there was, he had hired a tree guy who had previously come into me and asked about pruning and vista pruning. And I told him, obviously, certain dead branches and lifting trees for, you know, maintenance, and you know, you can do a little bit of vista pruning within certain parameters per our regulations. So he did come in and ask me about it beforehand. So I told him in terms of hazardous branches pruning, all that stuff was okay. As far as I know, that's what he did. But unfortunately, I did get a few calls from people across the water. They said that obviously that was happening. They thought some stuff may have been taken out. So I did go to the site. Unfortunately, it did look like some trees came down. Nino and I counted 6 of them. So I'm willing to do this as a streamlined process if you guys are okay with it. So given the fact that I'm pretty sure there was a misunderstanding of what my version of pruning and what our regulations version of pruning is versus what was actually done to the site. We did notice a lot of woody shrubs were cut down to the ground as well, but I can see that they are starting to grow back. So I would say that was definitely a hard prune, but again, not something that either myself nor Nino as the owner had authorized. So I think this was more than what we were all expecting. And I'm happy to work with him directly. I just met him on site this morning and I said, hey, like, let me talk to the commission. But I think, you know, obviously since I think most of those trees are in the 50 and I'll try to get an accurate count, I would want to see 2-to-1 replacement at the very least with similar native species. He said he's happy to get the trees now in the fall and plant them. And then we can monitor the shrubs and see what comes back and replace those in kind if they do not grow back. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just a case of you give someone an inch and they took a mile. And I think there was a misunderstanding of what my version of pruning is versus what was actually done to the site. But neither of us were aware of that, so.
Just a question, is that property belong to 94, the house next to it? Or is
So
that?
yes, they're two separate lots. Yeah, so they're 2 separate lots owned by the same party. So some of the work, like mostly the shrub work, and I think 1 or 2 trees were cut down on 94 Black Horse, and then the majority of the trees and stuff that was cut down was on the abutting empty parcel where eventually a home will be built there. They are working on permitting to do that and submit that to us. But again, neither of us were aware that the work was going to occur past where that existing erosion control barrier is. You know, in terms of removal, I knew a little bit of pruning was going to happen out there, and I was fine with that within certain parameters, obviously to not harm the health of the trees, but not a removal of vegetation. So, I mean, I can work with him directly to do 2-to-1 replacement for the trees and keep an eye on the shrubs if you guys are okay with that, or unless you guys want any additional action. You know, I can work with Nino. He's also on the call right now, so we can work with him.
I mean, what do the commissioners think? First of all, I mean, is this, I guess this is procedurally appropriate for us to consider right now. I mean, even though it wasn't necessarily specifically noticed how we're going to handle this. And then, you know, typically or frequently we ask for some sort of mitigation plan. In this case, you know, given the fact that seems like it was an innocent mistake and a lack of, you know, maybe difficult communication issue and Charlotte volunteered to sort of see it through administratively and enforce the 2-to-1 and have them come back to us once it's sort of completed. I'm okay deferring to Charlotte. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks. Do we want a mitigation planting plan and to have that come to us before it's approved and not just go with Charlotte administratively? I'd hear anybody's thoughts on it.
I wonder if this is, you know, we've got a willing applicant or a homeowner in Charlotte, you know, maybe we should give them a shot at trying to sort this out a little bit.
I think that makes sense to me too, Sanji.
Happy to
Anyone
do
else?
that on my end. I moved out of the property. I was monitoring construction pretty closely until the last 4 to 5 weeks, and was the first time I visited the site in about a month. Was with Charlotte this morning, and I didn't even know he had talked to Charlotte about pruning beyond the 50. His directive was to just clear right up to the mulch stock that we had laid out. Yeah, across the entire property. So I was as shocked as Charlotte was. As far as the tree removal, I did explain to Charlotte when I purchased the entire property a couple of years back, that entire area was mowed flat. Not that Andy did that, but it certainly was maintained to some extent. Similarly to the yard, which is, you know, in the 50 on 94. But yeah, I'd like to try to do the 2-to-1 before the fall ends, and you know, we potentially could be trading these lots, so I don't want this to become somebody else's problem. I'm happy to, you know, take corrective measures myself before the lots are sold off.
Well, Charlotte, I mean, I would probably like, I mean, I don't have any problem with that. And I think we could let it go with that. Do you think we could bring this matter up one more time at another hearing? Let's move forward that way, but maybe I'd like to drive by and take a look.
Okay. Yeah, do you want me to put it as an update for the next meeting and have you guys go down and take a look? And do you want Nino to start working on any plantings, or do you guys want to look at it first?
I don't really know what I would say that would change the 2-to-1 anyway.
Okay.
So I think if Nino would like to start working on plantings, I think that would be fine. But I'd still like to probably, you know, take a quick look before giving any further sign off anyway. But I'm sure ultimately it's going to be something like that, you know. So, but I guess my question is it just super convenient that, you know, these properties are about to be sold and now it's all clean and pretty looking, and that was just, you know, and I don't discount or not believe what Nino's saying at all, but it still does sound kind of convenient, you know, at the same time. So I just like to peek at it. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts, Commissioner Bell.
No.
Or McIntyre or Harrigan. Okay. Yeah, let's just have another update in a couple weeks.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I'll probably just poke my head in.
Okay, yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I will draft up a violation notice instead of an enforcement order. It still is an enforcement action, so do not assume that that's obviously a soft thing by any means. It's still a violation. So we did count 6 trees. At least 3 of those appear to be pine and cedars, and then the rest of them were deciduous looking, and then a handful of woody shrubs that were cut down to the ground. But I did note on site that some of them are already growing back. But I did mention to Nino that I think we can plant a variety of woody shrubs back, especially on that slope between 94 and the other parcel, and fill in the space while those plants revegetate, unless you guys just want to wait and see if those regrow. But, you know, they are cut down to the ground now. They don't have any benefit now, but they are growing back. The trees obviously will not grow back, so.
Yeah, then just one,
Like Sanji said, yeah.
one
Sorry.
thing, like when you do visit the site, some of where he cut these down did not benefit the view at all. I don't know
No.
what he was doing. I
know.
actually I don't think it was actually Andy's fault either. I know he was away when his guys
Yeah.
went to town down there.
I think the
But-
guys went nuts.
They don't, like, you'll see they're in the middle of the 2 properties. They actually served as a nice buffer between the 2. So it's not a benefit to the sale of the lot. And I have several lots down there, you know, 2 of which have not been cleared, and you know that it's not a play for a view. It had a pretty good view,
Okay.
despite the couple of trees. They weren't large trees to begin with. I think Charlotte would agree. I think the biggest was a 5-inch caliber.
Well, the 2
maybe
pines
6.
looked bigger, like the ones that were further up the hill that were probably in the 100-foot buffer looked like they were pretty hefty. But the
Yeah.
ones down, the ones in the 50 were small. They were anywhere from, I would say, maybe 4 to 6 plus or minus inches. So they were smaller trees. I think the cedar may have been maybe 6 to 8, but the other deciduous trees were small. And then the pine trees that I believe are in the 100, and I'll look at it on your plans, obviously, but those were a little bit bigger. But usually our standard MO that we've been doing recently for enforcement is 2-to-1 replacement in the 50, 1-to-1 in the 100. But it also depends on obviously the species, the size, the severity. So we definitely obviously don't always go with that, you know, breakdown, but that's, yeah.
Well, I think that's good information that it wasn't like clearly like a, you know, a obvious benefit to the property because it's going to be sold or traded soon. So that's actually a good additional piece of information. Thank you for that, Mr. DeNuno.
Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, if you guys are
Kathy,
okay
did
with
you have
that,
something else?
if anybody wants to swing by the site and offer any additional recommendations before I draft up the letter, that I'd love and appreciate your input. If anybody wants to go down there and take a look, I counted 6 stumps, and then you know, a handful of obviously woody shrubs that look like that were, you know, all cut. Yeah, it was all within the stone wall that's at the edge of the marsh. On
Okay.
both properties. But yeah.
Do
Okay,
you have any other 48-hour matters, Charlotte?
a few more, but yeah, thank you, Nino. I appreciate you sticking around. We'll
Thanks,
figure it
Charlotte.
out.
Have
Thank
a
you.
good night.
Yeah.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kathy, I think you had one more, right? Before I go into my list.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah, something I noticed a few months ago, actually, on Jerusalem Road, 387 Jerusalem Road, on the ocean side of the road. I saw a couple of people, adults, pouring something into the roots, the stalk and the root of some plants. It looked like Phragmites that had been cut down, and they were pouring something into it. And now if you go by it, you see that those are dead. They've been,
When was this,
I don't know
Kathy?
what they poured in, but I'm sorry.
Probably herbicide. Yeah. When did you see
I
them
don't know
doing
what,
that?
when did I see it?
Mhm.
A couple of months ago.
Okay.
I had some guests and we were driving along. And there's a little metal sign stuck in the ground that says 387. It's next to that
Okay.
You'll see 87, then you'll see that row of
Yeah.
dead ends things. And
87.
yeah, I don't know if the house is directly across, but there's a little, sign in the ground there that marks it.
Okay. So would you say,
Yeah, right about, oh, I can't do it.
that's okay. Is it where these rocks are, or is it down on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
side?
right in there. Yep, right
In
around
here?
there. Yep.
Okay, and
right
it's
there.
on along the road or in the road?
Yep, on the road. Yep, right there on the bank there. Yep.
Okay. Ugh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll swing by and I'll take a look. If there is evidence of herbicide stuff, you're gonna see it. So I think that's enough evidence for violation. But I'll go out and take a look. Okay. And was that it, Kathy?
That's it.
Okay, great. And I'll be brief, but following up on another property on Black Horse, I had talked to you guys about this before, that this is what was done. Whatever they did, they created this little gravel path, and as you can see, it goes on this ledge right in front of the water. I can't clearly see on near map if trees were cut down because the aerial imagery is as of August, and I think this was done in mid-September. That's when I got the calls. So I don't know from the photo here, I can't tell if trees were removed. I mean, gravel was definitely spread on this ledge and they added these little, I mean, you can kind of see here, maybe some branches were trimmed, but yeah, they added this gravel path. You can see the gravel path on near map. So I'll pull that up real quick. But you can see it.
That photo. Do you have a drone or something?
That's just going on Zillow.
Oh, really? It's like above.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's just on Zillow. So it's this ledge here. You can see where this gravel path was added. This was not originally here. So they did do that. It is a disturbance because you got the marsh right here. So they're, and marsh right here and then plus floodplain. So I would safely assume this is in the buffer zone at the very least, in wooded buffer. And then whatever they put here, I can't tell. I might be able to look at the photo versus here, but I can't tell if trees were removed up here. I was told trees were removed, but obviously that's hearsay until I can prove it. So, but yeah, they did add this. I think that's enough. And then also I will note, you guys can see it if you drive down Black Horse Lane. At the beginning of this driveway, which is very long, as you can see, they were removing vegetation here and they pushed back Phragmites. So that is clear cause for violation to bring them in anyway. So, I mean, I saw landscaping crews all here. They were cutting and pushing stuff back and adding mulch. And I mean, that's right up against the marsh. So that's a no-no. But yeah, this, I'm not really sure up here on this ledge if trees were removed. Maybe this one, I don't know. I have to take a little bit more of a look. It looks like maybe, but I don't know if you guys, want to look at it, but yeah, maybe it looks like some trees were removed, I guess. It looks maybe this cluster here. So, yep. Okay. I'll bring them in. I guess I just answered my own question. And then for other 48-hour updates, if it's okay with you guys, I want to share this email that I got, and I'm happy to weigh in on this, but unfortunately a building permit has already been issued, so I don't know how much of an issue this is at this point. There was something on 475 Jerusalem Road, where a building permit was issued to do a little overlook, and I did get some calls from neighbors about it. It is in the buffer zone. It was over existing disturbed space. Sorry, give me one sec. So again, a building permit was already issued. John had gone out to the site. He did stop their work initially. Oops, sorry. Can you guys see my email, or is it? Yep. Okay, great. So, I mean, this is what's being built. It is over disturbed existing space, but I mean, I don't really know what action there is if a building permit was already issued, I mean, I wasn't a sign off. And I think John had made the judgment call on the site. He did stop their work because they were initially working without a permit. He looked at it with them. He did say no modifications to this deck, which does extend into the 50 and pretty much up against the resource area. He did say nothing was allowed to be done to this existing stone wall or deck, just the overhang, you know, and what's already over existing impervious. So he made a judgment call, I think, assuming that there was no change in impervious, that you wouldn't need a permit from conservation. You know, it's hard with these situations where you can argue one way that it's not an alteration, but it's still construction in the 50-foot buffer. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what else there is to resolve here. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this, but I haven't responded to this guy who's been calling.
And Charlotte, just to understand what happened, like they were working without a building permit and then they had to get a
Initially.
building.
Yep, and he had stopped their work. He went to the site. He advised them on what they needed to do. They did end up pulling a permit for this. And yeah, I got the calls afterwards. But John also mentioned he had already spoken to this person and he, I think, told him what was going to happen. So this guy talked to me afterwards. I mean, it's awkward when a permit's already been issued, I guess is my point. So I don't know what you guys, if there's even anything to do, but no vegetation was removed. You know, it is over existing disturbed space in the 50, but yeah.
Well, I mean, he went to them for the building permit. We could go to them for our permit too. I mean, what's keeping us for like,
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is he is the director of permitting and inspections, so there is a little bit of an overstep there in certain circumstances because he's not just the building inspector. So, I mean, this does come up sometimes, but I think John did make a judgment call that assuming there was no alteration because there's no change in impervious surface. So you're building this deck thing over existing impervious. So, yeah, I mean, these instances are tough. I mean, I can argue this both ways. I mean, we do have a very strict 50-foot buffer policy, so, yeah.
Was there construction? I mean, it looks like it's a deck being built, but is there anything being staged in the buffer? Is stuff being, you know?
I mean, they definitely have stuff.
Beyond the buffer?
They have
Or-
stuff in
Yeah.
here. Yeah, they have stuff in here, but it's within an existing retaining wall that's pretty high. So they are, you know, it's not like they're going down the slope here into the coastal bank, but they are staying within this retaining wall space that's existing lawn and patio.
Yeah, I think this was one other concern. Like, yeah, like, is there any concern about protecting the protected zone, like from material debris, things like that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
I mean, I defer to the board. I mean, given the fact that, you know, he did get permission ultimately from the, you know, from the building inspector, I'd probably let this one go. But, you know, this is the kind of thing we should probably be mindful of. But I defer to the rest of the commission on if they want to make anything else out of this, obviously.
I sort of feel so too, but just clever. Charlotte, have you been there?
I had been here previously to close out an ancient permit, so I do know what the site looks like. But this was not brought to my attention until this guy called me and emailed me. I did talk to John about it. John said he's already been to the site. He's made, you know, he's dictated the steps, and, you know, again, given the fact that there was no increase or decrease in impervious surface, he didn't think submitting an RDA to us was applicable here. Like I said, I can honestly, just being blunt here, I can go either way on this. I mean, it's a structure in the 50, but then you can argue it's not an alteration, then that's why you submit an RDA. But at the same point, if there's no alteration, it may not even be a permitted activity. So I can kind of go back and forth on this. It's a little hard when you get into the weeds of these regulations of what is an alteration, and given the fact with our, you know, our strict 50-foot buffer, no alteration adverse impact policy. So, I mean, this is a tough one, honestly. I'm really torn. I think part of it, I don't know what other action is needed. I would at least like to send a letter and just let them know that in the future they really need to be consulting me separately, you know, just so that I can speak to John before this is issued. Because stuff like this does occasionally come up, and John and I have some conversations about it and we talk it out. So we are pretty communicative. This was just, I think, a fluke. I mean, with John already stopping their work and needing to press his own enforcement from a building perspective, sometimes, you know, he makes that decision for conservation too as the director of permitting. So yeah. I don't know. It's tough.
I like the
I'm
idea
torn.
of a letter, just so they're aware for any future projects.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is a new owner and I don't know if they're flipping the house. So I would very much like to put on record, I've already said it on the site, but I do want to put it in writing if you guys are good with that, just to send them a reminder. Any changes in the buffer zone do need a permit, or at least need the review of the conservation agent. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And especially if they sell this home, you know, then they can give the letter to the new homeowner, hopefully, but yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, what are our alternatives to just sending them a letter? It's like,
I mean, have them submit an after the fact RDA. I mean, like you said, what would that accomplish other than just making them pay for the application? You know, I mean, in theory, technically could tell them to rip it out, but I don't know. Building permit's already been issued, so I don't know about that.
did
I mean,
John,
yeah, the only
John-
other alternative I think would be an after the fact
John have
RDA.
did John have them put in a permit?
Yes, so he did have them file for a building permit, and that is now issued.
Well, then why don't we just have them file a permit, file for it then, just to,
I don't know. It's up to you guys. Or you could just have a show cause. I don't know. I mean, those are the alternatives, I guess, other than just writing a letter as a warning. You could, you know, after the fact permit, which, you know, or bring him in for a show cause and just slap him on the wrist. I don't know. I mean,
it's a, it's.
I mean,
yeah,
go ahead.
It's an elevated porch,
mhm,
which if it's especially if it's over existing like
mhm.
lawn, or
Yeah.
an increase. So I think having them submit a permit is just more like in line with what John's doing, and we would
Okay.
prove it, then they're
Okay.
more effective, I think, than just sending them a letter. It's a waste of your time just to send them a pointless letter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can send them
think that's
a
more
letter
effective.
that we were notified
Mhm.
after the fact, and, you know, we want a permit too, I guess.
One thing I might add is I really like Chris's idea, because ultimately, like, if other neighbors had alerted you to this, at least let's maybe just follow our procedure and do an RDA then.
Yeah, I mean, John allowed him to allowed to slide on the building side. I mean, it seems like a project allowed to slide on the Concom side, but just do the procedure, and that's more effective than just sending them you know, some.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to write them a letter to submit an after the fact RDA, you know, just to, you know, make it aware that there is a process, and, you know, a building permit isn't the only permit you may need. But yeah, I can do that. And we'll just go from there. I'll just tell them to just submit a permit. I won't do a show cause to have us tell them that. We can tell them that during the hearing.
Okay.
But I know that I mean, off the record, I know one of the reasons for the concern is obviously this person is, you know, concerned about obviously a view. So that's not our jurisdiction. So as long as everyone's, obviously we all know that. But yeah, it is a disturbance in the buffer zone in the 50s. So, okay, sounds good. I will tell them to do that. But that was my last 48-hour issue. Other than that, everything else has been going pretty well since I've started coming back and walking sites. So just keep going.
Great.
Lots of
I'm happy
COCs
you're back,
coming in.
Charlotte.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of COCs coming in. So I've been pretty good with only doing a couple on our agendas, but eventually you guys might get a list.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Sorry, I
Well,
took up way more time to discuss that. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Well, we had a couple of hearings that went a little longer than maybe they could have, but there was some detail. Anybody else have anything else? It's been 3.5 hours, and for a short agenda, we definitely milked that one. All right. With that, any motion to close the meeting tonight?
Sure, I'll make a motion to close the public meeting.
Second,
Voice vote's fine. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye. None opposed? Good night, all. We're 5-0, unanimous to close the meeting.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
Good night, all.
Thank
All
you,
right, have a
Charlotte.
good night. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Charlotte.
Take care.
Bye, guys.